So Hasan Piker had his uncle Cenk from the Young Turks on, and apparently he is running for president. And they had a very long debate about it. And I've already watched this beforehand. I wasn't sure I was going to cover this, but honestly, it's pretty good. Uh, it was a pretty good debate, at least in terms of like entertainment wise. And I figured we might as well watch along with it. It's going to be a long ass video, but we'll see.
Wait, no, I did not use attempted murder. I used the anecdote that you brought up.
And you're the one hurting the progressive cause and the trans rights cause.
Look around! Look around! Crime is happening everywhere. You brought it up, and I'm fact-checking it.
To show you God reality that everyone else on Earth sees.
No.
That no one agrees with you in the polling.
That would be...
No one agrees with you.
Cenk Uygur is here, ladies and gentlemen. It's a classic uncle-nephew face-off, as I have talked about already. For those of you who don't know, Cenk wrote a book. This is hit me in the face. Cenk wrote a book called Justice is Coming, How Progressives Are Going to Take Over the Country and America is Going to Love It, which is, I mean, I'm a very cynical person. I don't think, I'm a very pessimistic person. I don't think it's happening anytime soon, but maybe you'll make an argument for that. But yeah, we're going to talk about your book, and we're going to talk about another thing that you literally didn't tell me while you were announcing it, which is that you're running for president. And of course, I'm going to ask you why or even how. But that's it. That's those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about. Before we get into any of that, though, let's start off with the Democrats actually doing something that is unheard of, unimaginable, which is showing backbone and showing a spine and actually doing the right thing, even though they were like kind of forced into a corner to do the right thing on. Kevin McCarthy's ouster as Speaker of the House.
So, look, first, I explain all the depressing stuff, so you're not going to be surprised by that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I explain why, even though progressives are 2/3 of the country, and there's no argument about that we don't win. I explain exactly why money and media are the two giant factors. And I explain how we live under corporate rule and how we lost the Democratic Party, let alone the Republican Party. But then Kirkus Reviews and everybody else says it's a super hopeful book because in Chapter 6 I explain how we're going to win. And the answer is actually really easy, Haas, which is young people are super progressive. Oh. And so the polling is overwhelming. The Republican pollster Frank Luntz's his toupee's on fire.
Friend of the show, Frank Luntz.
Yeah. Noam Chomsky agrees. You look at any of the data, under 45 in 2020 voted massively progressive. Now this time around, it'll be under 49. By the time you get to 2028, it's good night, Irene. It's under 54-year-olds and they're done.
I think this is I think this is wrong. I will say this is like the classic trope that time and time again the next generation will say was trope. If with one exception,
that's just not true.
With one exception, the material realities for the upcoming generation, my generation, is significantly more dire.
That's right.
And therefore, they will vote along the lines if they are still participating in the democratic process at that point. If they haven't fully checked out, they might end up like having a much poorer country overall and having less economic prospects overall will yield understandable results and will yield the same voting patterns. I do not think that it's more so a generation being progressive, but instead a generation not having access to additional economic opportunities that prior generations had. Because you see it time and time again. When people have more assets, when people have more capital, they start voting in predictable patterns. They start voting for deregulation because they understand that like this is intrinsically aligned with their interests. Oh my God, Kaya is so good at opening that door now. It's crazy. I had put her outside, and she literally opened the door immediately and ran in here. That's nuts.
Okay, let me break that down for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So number one, the trope is actually not.
I got close.
Trope is not intergenerational. It's about demographics overall, right? So people say, "Oh, that's okay. The Democrats are going to win because they're going to get black voters, they're going to get Latino voters," and that's not at all guaranteed. So I never believed in that. And the identity politics generally doesn't work. But the idea that, hey, it's okay, the next generation never saves us, isn't true. And everybody always says, oh, well, we are going to get more conservative as we get older. Well, I quote in the book meta-studies that show that's not at all true. In fact, your political leanings get set between the ages of 14 and 24. Every study shows this. And is it true for everyone? No, but is it true generally? Definitely. And so one of the examples that I give, Haas, is that back in 2011, I did a normal study, and they found out that people above 65 years old were the most likely to vote Republican. And generally speaking, they grew up in the older generation, that kind of Gen X, et cetera, grew up in the Reagan times. And actually, they were just as conservative when they were younger, okay? But above 85 was super liberal. And the reason for that is because they grew up with like FDR, LBJ, JFK, some range of that, right? And those guys stayed progressive their whole lives.
I know, but there's like also at that point, how many fucking 85-year-olds exist? You know what I mean? I feel like that.
No, that's not.
That yields
it's not
a
about
lot of.
Like right now, those guys are 97, right? That's not.
There's
the
like
issue.
8 of them.
No. The issue is that it's totally bullshit that people become more conservative as they get older. It's not at all true. Not backed up by the data. And this generation.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that the only reasonable, the only thing that I would agree with on that data point is that it is totally, entirely pegged to their economic circumstances.
And the economic circumstances of the younger generation is very, very unfortunately are fucked.
Yeah. No. That's why I'm saying
Absolutely.
like that is ostensibly the only reason that I think the younger generations, as they get older and are devoid of the same opportunities that prior older generations had, because like a lot of the current wealth that we have in this country is trapped in like baby boomers and Gen Xers. Like they are like the last remaining generation with access to any kind of assets, homes, things of that nature. You're coming to a situation where you have like permanent renters that will never be able to purchase a home.
So part of the reason
that changes their dynamic, that changes their
100%.
political perspective.
And this is all going towards exactly my point, which is, look, part of the reason that the younger generations, are both millennials and Gen Z, are so progressive is cultural factors, right? But the other reason is economic factors that nobody ever talks about. They have no chance of buying a home for the great majority of those generations, right? Everything for them is much harder. Student debt is infinitely higher. They're much more tied to corporate rule and have become chattel in a lot of ways. And they're rebelling against that. Besides which, this isn't arguable. They would have to change the dynamic of those generations massively over the next 1 to 5 years for the Republicans to be able to win, right? Because in the 2020 elections, even the states within the Democratic Party that Bernie lost, he would win under 45-year-olds with 40, 50-point margins, even after the race was largely over. The handwriting's on the wall. And by the way, what saved the Democrats in the 2022 midterms? Younger voters. What saved Joe Biden in 2020? 11% more younger voters showed up. That's the only reason he won. And so this is all trending not just towards Democrats,
not just younger people, I think,
but towards progressives.
I don't think it's just younger people. I think it's also it was white people in general. Like there are more white people now voting for Joe Biden than they did before with Hillary Clinton.
Look, there's a lot of different demographics.
That's a huge demographic shift.
I know, but those things.
So we'll probably get more into this later. Here's my whole thing about this, like the younger generation is gonna save us. I think it's full of bullshit. If you've ever seen what was it? Bill and Ted Face the Music. It was like the latest Bill and Ted movie that came out like a while ago. The whole thing about it was that like the problem with Bill and Ted is that in order for them to achieve their goal, they need to start doing it like now. They need to start working towards it now, but instead they kept pushing it along further and further because they figured that they would eventually solve it at some point, or the younger generation would do it. When really it took everyone to clear their objective, which was to make a song that would unite the world or whatever. But like to me, like it's a very real similar situation in which the older generation, Jan Grey here, thinks that the younger generation is just gonna magically save us. When really it doesn't work. It just feels like pushing responsibility down the road and trying to wipe your hands clean.
Shift. They go back and forth, and now all of a sudden Trump's up to 42% with Latinos. He's up to 20% with African Americans. So I'm not relying on that 1%. But I have not seen anything that challenges the numbers.
I don't think the 20%
progressives.
number is real, but
Yeah, no, it might be an outlier. It might not be exactly right. But the bottom line is, I've never seen a compelling case for demographics saving the Democrats or progressives other than age. And age is the biggest demographic and the biggest difference maker. And so there's other factors too, changing media.
So how are you going to activate younger voters to go out and vote? Because out of the voter-eligible population, younger voters are poorer on average, and poorer equals less likely to vote in general. Poorer equals less time off from work, a job that you're most likely trapped in the service sector. How are you going to get young people to go out and vote? This conundrum is the reason why a problem that even Bernie Sanders was unable to solve is the reason why he didn't win in the primaries. That was a big part of the problem.
So I hear you. Those are generally problems, but it's not that Bernie Sanders didn't solve it. So first of all, Bernie Sanders won the first 3 states, as we all know, right? And what happened then is mainstream media activated the older voters to vote in droves against Bernie, right? So normally after you win the first state, let alone the first 3 states, you get a significant amount of positive coverage, and I have the numbers and the data in the book. But of course, Bernie got like 3 times the negative coverage.
Okay. We're saying the same thing.
Right.
You're just saying...
No, but my point is, at that point, even with mainstream media just blasting Bernie, talking about executions in Central Park and giving Biden enormous positive coverage, etc., Obama rallying everyone, Buttigieg, etc. Still, if it was 4 years later, Biden would have lost to Bernie because of the age demographics. Just couldn't do it with 45-year-old and under enough. Like if it was like 49-year-olds and under, Bernie almost certainly would have won. So, and here we are 4 years later. Look, is it written in stone? Of course not. But is it as dire as people think? Not even close. I think we're definitely the favorites, not the underdogs. And Haas, here's another giant factor. Media. We all know mainstream media hates progressives and destroys us at every turn, right? And so they activate the older voters, etc. But now they're losing their power. But here's a really important fact that people don't absorb enough. Now, for most of the television networks, their costs are higher than their revenue. Are they really going to be able to last 5 more years of bleeding out? So at some point, this doesn't just wither away, it capsizes, right? Meanwhile, what's happened? TYT's happened, you've happened, tons of new streamers progress, and almost all of them are progressive, right? So we've got some right-wingers trying their best, spreading sexism, bigotry, racism.
I think right-wing media is significantly more popular. I wouldn't say that they're popular because they have more genuine grassroots support, but they're popular in the same exact material reasons as to why CNN cuts corporate propaganda, MSNBC cuts corporate propaganda, and Fox News is the most popular news broadcast. They have moneyed interests backing them, whereas real progressive content has to revolve around, or if they want to be sustainable, heavily rely on subscriptions, and that is incredibly difficult. There's nothing as good as just having unlimited wads of money from concentrated wealth that will give you a couple billion here, a couple billion there, and that is precisely the reason why Daily Wire is fucking, taking our lunch money all day, every fucking day. Think about it this way, the Steven Crowder $50 million conversation. I would say, not to toot my own horn here, but probably more popular a figure overall than Steven Crowder. There is no $50 million deal coming my way. That is unimaginable. That would never happen in a million years. Because Steven Crowder doesn't have to generate $50 million in revenue. He just has to keep saying the right things, and billionaire-backed independent media that is basically cutting the same exact propaganda that Fox News cuts will keep funneling money to those places.
Yeah. So I understand our disadvantages very well because I'm in this business, right? But look, even with all of our disadvantages, TYT gets about 5 billion views a year. So Daily Wire can kiss my ass. All the right-wingers combined can kiss my ass. And so the good news is I'm not just a good host. We have a lot of great hosts on TYT. I'm a really good businessman. And so I have maintained us in business for 21 years in an impossible industry. We built a network of progressives, and we just keep on winning. So they're not going to be able to get rid of us. We're going to win, and then when we get more resources, we're going to dominate even more. So the problem, the advantage that the right wing has is infinite money, and the left has almost no money at all, right? But the disadvantage that the right wing has is that they're not popular. We say things that are popular, and people like it, what we're saying, because it's in favor of them, right? The right wing has garbage that says, oh, rich people are great. You should give all of your money to rich people. This show brought to you by rich people. That shit's never going to be ultimately that popular. And part of the reason why
but that's why they always move around and try to latch on to focus tested talking points on deeply and undesirably unpopular policy positions that they have. That's why nobody says we want to criminalize abortion and like lock women up that have a pregnancy and want to exercise their bodily autonomy. They say we're pro-life. Life begins at conception. And when there is an anti-Catholic, anti-Christian slant in the United States of America, which there is, then they change the conversation around from even someone like Ben Shapiro, who is very religious, like who doesn't hide that. They change the narrative around from, instead of talking about like how life begins at conception is a Christian talking point and therefore you have to abide by it because America is a Christian nation, they move towards how this is actually a moral argument. This is the scientific argument. This kind of paradigm shift, this kind of like propagandizing and the mechanism that backs it is all too powerful because, once again, it goes back to concentration of wealth. It doesn't really matter. Like Daily Wire is more successful than both of us combined. I'm sorry. That is just the reality.
No, not in terms of views. In terms of money,
I don't
have more
think
money.
so. I think that they are.
You think they get more than 5 billion views a year?
I don't know. I don't know what metrics you're working with when you say 5 billion views a year. I don't know if you're just simply talking about YouTube.
Facebook,
Yeah,
Roku,
you're talking about YouTube, Facebook,
Snap, you name it.
That's great. If Daily Wire is on all of those platforms with the exception of Snap, I think, probably. I would assume that they're not on Snapchat. Yes, they probably get significantly more. I don't have like access to their media deck, but their Facebook numbers blow everyone else's out of the water. Time and time again, every single Daily Wire content creator is absolutely, at the top of the leaderboard in terms of impressions, in terms of readers, in terms of everything.
So Haas, let me give you my perspective and context on it. So since I'm like a generation older than you, I grew up completely on mainstream media. We didn't have any options at all. And I write about that a little bit in Chapter 5. And that turned everybody Republican. And the reason for that was that they would tell you, like, Ronald Reagan is the Gipper, and he's a cowboy, and he's awesome, and America's a shining city on a hill. That's what Republicans stand for. And Democrats are weak losers like Michael Dukakis looking funny in a tank. And they all did it 24/7. There was no other option. Just corporate media. And so I think conservative voters have some redeeming values. We can talk about that if you want. But all Republican politicians and all Republican media figures are liars. Okay? They have to lie because they can't say, hey, I want you to take all your money and give it to the rich. That's their actual objective. And they can't ever say that. Then you could say it about 100 different things. They can't say, hey, I want you to smoke cigarettes and get cancer because they pay me. Hey, I want you to take guns and shoot yourselves because the gun manufacturers pay me. I want you to destroy the planet because ExxonMobil pays me. They're never going to say any of that. So it's one lie after another, and we call them talking points. But these days, even if you were right and Daily Wire is slightly larger than TYT or TYT slightly larger than Daily Wire, it doesn't matter. Because what matters is that they can't stop us, you, and 1,000 other streamers out there. And we're going to get the message out. And so, like, now some of their old talking points sound so dumb and asinine. And so when they try their things about, like, oh, trickle-down economics. When I was growing up, the media actually brainwashed people into thinking trickle-down economics was real.
Yeah, same. Okay.
And now we've destroyed that. Anyone who says trickle-down economics is considered a total joke.
We didn't destroy that. I don't think that we destroy that. I think, like, objective reality and the lack of that promise destroyed it significally more than,
objective reality was always against it, Haas. It wasn't even close.
I know, but people started people after 30, 40 years of neoliberal austerity recognize now that, like, that is complete a bullshit. Now it doesn't matter because people still do the same thing. They move as soon as the established narrative, the norms that people recognize are at odds with whatever the media is saying or are at odds with what, like, right-wing moneyed interests are trying to pump, then ultimately they move on to the next thing. That's I am in agreement with what you're saying, but like ultimately the market collapse in 2008 probably did significantly more for people to understand that like trickle down economics was bullshit from the jump than anything else. That played a major role in people losing confidence in like a lot of economists and what they were saying, which they should lose confidence in because these guys are spreading poison. But
here, let me give you one example of the power of an alternative. And this is a very ironic example. So Iraq War was always bullshit. It was always obvious. Mainstream media didn't say it. They said, "Oh yeah, weapons of mass destruction," and they attacked from the general same region as Iraq, etc. Right? So, okay, 70% of Americans, when we attacked Iraq, thought that Saddam Hussein had personally attacked us on 9/11. Right? So they mass lied, mass hypnosis, etc. So no matter how much we were right, we couldn't break through. And then that lasts for forever until Donald Trump goes, Iraq War was bullshit. And all of a sudden the dam breaks. And then the Republicans go, oh yeah.
No, I disagree with that as well.
No.
I think
Before
you and
that,
I have,
if not a single Republican said the Iraq War was bullshit.
You and I,
until
it doesn't
Trump
matter
said
what Republicans say. You and I are at fundamental odds and will forever be at fundamental odds in the way that we analyze the world, because I am a believer that the material conditions and things withering away, like larger structural moves in either direction, are significantly more important in bludgeoning people with reality than the media moving in a specific direction. I'm also a believer that like under an inherently oppressive construct, yes, you can inevitably shift the attitude on the more reactionary side of things, and unfortunately the only way to stop that is by waiting it out and just eating the pain. But I don't think that the media can get together. Like, let's say if tomorrow MSNBC, CNN, and mainstream media were no longer owned by the same corporate entities and we're actually doing objective journalism across the board, and not whenever like it is like anti-Trump, which drives clicks or whatever, and it's permissible, right? I don't think that would cause a genuine sea change in the way that I think you believe that.
Yeah, I think a progressive would be president the next day. Yeah.
I think that they would play a very significant role in changing people's attitudes, but the reality is that could never happen in our current structure regardless. There would be need for a world where the material realities were different.
But the material realities are different. So we've got every single thing lining up for us. Younger voters, the destruction of mainstream media, rise of new media, but also objective reality. So, for example, why did FDR incredibly progressive things? Why did LBJ, at least on social issues, do incredibly progressive things? Because
the economic realities, one, demanded it, and two, there was more pushback from outside groups at the time. There was more militant labor, and people were recognizing the writing on the wall about America's dire economic circumstance.
It's exactly right. And what's the situation we're in now? Almost exactly the same thing. Now we need to build a labor movement. We need to build more direct action.
I agree. That's why I do what I do. I think a lot of people don't understand that. The only place that I have any sort of optimism...
We're probably going to get into it later on. Cenk, there's some things I just really don't agree with him on. Some like hills that he has decided to die on, and if you are aware of TYT, you probably already know what those are, and we'll get to them. I will say though, the guy knows, at least when it comes to, I feel like this stuff, I feel like he definitely does kind of know what he's talking about. I did disagree with him with the younger voters thing. I still think that it is a problem, but like I don't think he's like a grifter. I don't think he's a hack. I think he does understand what he's talking about to some extent, but like he is right. I think our situation now is very dire, and I think that will lead to better progressive voting, but I don't think it is with just younger generation. I think or I don't think that pressure should be on the younger generation. I think it's just people realizing that materially we are kind of fucked. And I think that's ultimately what's going to lead to progressives winning. So it's kind of, I would say I'm between these two when it comes to this single issue right now. Like, I think they're both kind of right.
For the future is in the labor movement. which is why I do what I do. I want to change people's minds about certain things and allow them to see for themselves the autonomy that they can have, and change their immediate workplaces, somewhere that they spend 80% of their adult lives in, and therefore set up the groundwork for a mechanism of pushback against the Democratic Party, and force the Democratic Party's hand to do the right thing when it's a necessity to do so.
And look, all smart progressives are going in the same exact direction, right?
Yeah.
So
I've been on that direction.
Yeah, so my co-host Anna's obsessed with the labor movement, totally believes that's the answer. Nia Turner, who's another host on our network, just announced today that she set up a new group with Chris Smalls to back the labor movement and to even get funding for the labor movement whenever they go on strike, etc. And so that's what pushed FDR. That's what's going to push the next generation. Because, Haas, the economic situation isn't going to fix itself. Like, the old line of power never concedes without a demand, never has, never will. So we've got to demand it. And right now, since the economic situation is so bad for workers, they keep demanding it, right? So more demands.
It's not just that either. It's also, yes, it's also, there is actually a real tight labor market, and not a tight labor market with, like, you're right though, confidence is different, because we've already had tight labor market periods where income has not increased in the way that it's supposed to. Real income, real wages have not increased in the way that it's supposed to. And even economists are baffled by this reality. Well, the reason for that was because labor had lost and capital had won that war.
That's
Whereas
totally
now, in a post-COVID world, I think with the unimaginable amount of profits that these corporations are raking in, labor has a decent bargaining position, because they saw that, if people just simply didn't go back to work, that people were fucked.
Yeah. So look, they took and they took and they took and they took too much. And so this is how we get to balance. We push back. So we're in the middle of pushing back. And so everything is trending in our direction. The only thing is we can't snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And there's two icebergs ahead. And so I'm not Pollyannish. I see the icebergs probably better than anybody else does, and I'm really worried about it, okay? One is the progressive movement, honestly, and this is where you and I can begin to disagree, getting too radical and too away from what most Americans want.
Yeah, this is where we're going to start really disagreeing with him. But before we really get to that, again, I think he is off to a good basis. I feel like he just kind of went against himself there, I'm going to be honest. But I do think being progressive is starting to become more popular, especially not even just with the Kevin McCarthy stuff, but just kind of how the far right and just the right in general have kind of been making asses of themselves over the last few years. I think it definitely turns people away. Maybe not even just turning them away to a progressive, but just turning them away to maybe look at progressive in a better light, where it's just kind of well, we kind of already been where the opposite side was, and that wasn't good. So we'll bite the bullet and vote for you guys, even for people who may not like progressives. But I do think it's becoming more popular. I think, but I think it's becoming popular not for the reason that Cenk is proposing. I think it's becoming more popular to the reason why Hasan was proposing, where those material goods are just being lessened. We're not in a good state right now. I don't think it has to do with any media personalities, in all honesty. I do think that he does kind of undervalue what people like TYT himself and other creators like Surfs kind of bring to that base. But at the same time, I think it's gonna help that when people look at their own struggles and problems and realize the ways to fix it. But now we're gonna get into a really sticky situation.
And the second iceberg.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So look, we saying things like all sports leagues, including professional ones, has to allow trans women. They don't have a choice, etc. That pulls it 2%. You say, hey, it's a moral issue. It's really important.
Yeah, no one cares. He literally just admitted it himself. This is a 2%, and no one really cares. No one gives that much of a fuck. But this is what I was talking about earlier, where it was this is a stance of his that he refuses to budge on, and it's insane. And I feel like it comes from a lack of. I don't know much about the sports issue, whether it comes from a lack of understanding or not. But there's a whole thing with Anna, his co-host, that said that she hated the whole term birthing women, like a birthing person being referred, like a woman being referred to as a birthing person, despite the fact that like it was supposed to be like veered towards the left. It was supposed to be like addressing like people on the left, but that's not what they're doing. That's what the right thinks that is a right wing talking point that no like serious person on the left actually talks about, and it was just so weird and so dumb.
Do you think
sports leagues are like the most important thing in the whole wide world?
Do you think it's actually a significant issue? Do you think that that is a significant issue or a driver of the conversation, or cynically weaponized by Republicans with like some liberals taking the bait and then having a conversation about it instead of being like, fuck off, nobody cares about this, stop talking about this immediately?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what the right wing does. They weaponize every single issue. What I'm trying to get progressives to do is stop falling in the trap. So the minute they say it, our side comes out and goes, no, this is the most important issue. And anyone who disagrees is a Nazi. You just called 98% of the country Nazis.
Okay.
What are you doing? You're alienating voters like crazy.
Do you think that organizers on the ground, both trans and cis, that are members of labor unions, are even using this as a talking point in any meaningful capacity? Or is it simply reactionary Republicans bringing this up because they tried and unsuccessfully failed to push the anti-trans button with bathroom bills?
Except for the fact that they passed all those bills, which I despise. I hate those bills.
Let me just clarify something here. In the lead up to the 2016 election, you had the North Carolina bathroom bill that was anti-trans, right? You have to have the gender assigned at birth be the bathroom that you go to.
That's totally fair.
Okay,
right.
That failed. That was so objectively a failure that Donald Trump came out and said, I don't give a fuck where Caitlyn Jenner shits as long as she's shitting in Trump Tower, right? Something along those lines.
But
I'm paraphrasing.
He tried to ban them from the military.
Hold on. Let me finish.
That was also unpopular. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me finish. Okay? Yeah, he tried to ban trans people from the military. That was also unpopular. So, what did Republican interest groups do? The family, moral family, Christianity fundamentalist groups. What did they do? They went back to the drawing board and they looked for a reasonable sidestep that would still be anti-trans, that would open the door to anti-trans conversations that they could push for that was more popular. What did they find? They found that Americans love the concept that is bullshit. Meritocracy. What is the most meritocratic process in the entire country, maybe in the world? Sports. Americans love sports, and Americans believe that meritocracy is real, and it's especially real in sports. So they changed the narrative away from trans people can't pee and poo in the fucking bathrooms to trans people want to destroy sports. It was simply just another way to attack trans people. Which is precisely why I think a lot of people correctly looked at that and went, why the fuck are we talking about this? This is ultimately marginal. You just want to fucking eliminate trans people from public spaces. And I have never given an ounce of legitimacy to that argument, despite what public polling says, because the reality is no one gives a fuck about it. Let me tell you something that's more important than public polling, however. Because you brought up.
So far, I don't even see where we disagree.
Okay, so you brought up state legislatures, Republicans like passing incredibly, horrifyingly psychotic anti-trans bills.
Yeah.
Okay? And they're passing this. Yet there is no viable single issue voter out there that is like desiring these anti-trans bills. Although if you ask Americans directly about like, what do you think about a 14-year-old trans girl like participating in a swim meet, they might say 56% might say, fuck that, that's wrong, we shouldn't do that. But the reality is there isn't any real momentum on the ground for anti-trans shit. Voters do not give a fuck about trans people overall. The overwhelming majority of voters actually have apathy for trans people. They just don't care about it because they think that there's no trans people in their lives whatsoever. Republicans, however, have kept on pushing the anti-trans button over and over again and made it their major fucking talking point.
That's right.
That has yielded horrifyingly bad results for them. And instead of like fucking assassinating Christopher Rufo, for example, who's one of the leading guys here at the Manhattan Institute that was like doing the CRT stuff, doing the anti-trans stuff, instead of going, dude, what the fuck are you doing? You ruined our midterm chances when Biden had a historically bad economy when a red tsunami was supposed to happen. That was a major failure on their part, one that actually has led to Kevin McCarthy's ouster as the speaker right now, a domino effect of like the Republican Party imploding in and of itself, partially because the only thing that they have been looking for, the only thing that they have, the only tangible policy position is just increasing the dial of transphobia, but there's not enough people on the ground who are demanding it. And those who are demanding it are increasingly more psychopathic, which is pushing away normal fucking Republican voters who are just like, I just want tax cuts, man. Like, I'm racist, sure, but like, the fuck's going on? Like, I don't give a shit about this. Like, why are you talking about dismembering children's genitals all the fucking time? You sound like a psycho. They're getting outrage fatigue, and it has demonstrably been a failure. And that's part of the reason why you don't see Trump talking too much about wokeness or trans people. He like brings it up every now and then in his commentary, but it is far less than Ron DeSantis, wouldn't you say, who is an objectively less popular candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he hit it off the bat right there. It's a widely unpopular opinion. It makes no sense to really, like, base any sort of campaign off it. It only works unless you're, like, the most deranged fucking, reactionary there is. I mean, that's why fucking Matt Walsh talks about it all the fucking time, because he's a fucking brain-dead moron and a psychopath who just so desperately wants to control what people do with their bodies. But, like, no one cares that much about it. They don't look out into the field of a football game and it's just like, I wonder which one of them is trans. Like, they don't care. They just want to watch the game. Like, it's so widely unpopular of an opinion. I remember my brother. It was when that whole, like, controversy around that Olympic swimmer who was trans. And he showed me, like, a picture of it. It's like, can you believe they're saying this guy is a woman? And I was just like, dude, I don't care. Like, do you honestly care? It was like, my brother is a guy who just, like, he watches football. And that's it. Like, he's like a, blue-collar worker. He just wants to watch some football. I don't even think he watches basketball. He definitely doesn't watch, but he doesn't care that much about sports outside of football. Like, he doesn't watch the Olympics either. I was just like, bro, why are you a fan? Are you like a secret fan of Olympic diving? And I just never knew that until now. Like, I know you don't care about this. Who cares? Like, you're not a fan of it. I don't know why you're trying to talk about it. Like, obviously, I have no problem with it. Like, alright, it's a woman doing a woman's sport. She's participating with other women. That's not a problem with me. But it's a problem for these guys because they can't get it out of their heads that this person can be a woman just because they're trans. Like, they can't get it out of their head that trans women are women. They have to be like, no, they're not. They're not. And they have to, like, advocate for these things that they don't give a shit about. Like, they don't care about women's sports. But at the same time, like, again, it's a widely unpopular opinion. It's the same with, like, most trans issues in general. They're just unpopular. It's just really, like, the far right freaks who really care about this shit. And it's just, I don't understand. Like, I don't understand why this is a hill that Cenk is willing to die on.
So, with the exception of Trump and DeSantis thing, which we can get into.
Also, that is a good point. Trump doesn't bring it up because he knows it's such a fucking unpopular opinion. Like, even when the fucking poster boy for one side is literally just, like, trying to avoid the issue every now and again, why would you ever bring it up? It's such an unpopular opinion that even he's not bringing it up. And he's willing to talk about a lot of stuff. He's willing to call Mexicans rapists. But he knows that the whole trans issues is just fucking bullshit. And it's not even, like, popular within his base. And, like, with DeSantis doesn't have that clarity that Trump has. He is a far-right freak who will talk about these issues. And that's why he's so unpopular. Because the normal Republicans, they still see that, and it's just like, that's too weird for me. Like, I believe some weird stuff, but that's very weird, and I don't know why you're talking about all this shit.
I agree with everything you said. So now let me give it to you from my perspective and why I'm concerned about it. So, number one, Republicans bring this up because they're fishing and fishing. All their positions are deeply unpopular. So they're fishing for one position that they could finally get some sort of popularity on, right? So they dig all the way down to trans sports at the high school level, and they get over 70% saying, okay, no, meritocracy, we shouldn't do that, right? So, if at that point, you and I agree, we fight back when they propose a bill, and we do the best we can, and we aggressively make the case that you just made and that I make all the time on the air, right? And then we're okay with it, and everybody would agree. The country is in favor of trans rights, okay? But in the midst of these conversations, one of the things that happens is, on air, I say, okay, you're asking, fine. I think at the high school level, trans girls should be able to participate with biological girls because...
Why do you talk about that at all beyond how...
Because it comes up. Because
no,
there's a bill.
I'm
fighting against the bill.
Okay, but why do you talk about it beyond it being a distraction, perfectly cooked up, because you said you agree with me? Why do you talk about it beyond it being a fucking bill that is laughably unpopular, so unpopular that, like...
If you don't know, that whole comment where Cenk was saying that people were calling him Nazis, what's calling him a Nazi? He's kind of referring to serfs right here, who resubbed immediately, like, during this whole issue. That's why I was laughing, because I just think that's funny. Because when he said the whole, like, oh, people are calling me Nazis, he's referring to serfs, even though serfs never really said that.
Agree with me. Why do you talk about it beyond it being a fucking bill that is laughably unpopular, so unpopular that, like,
It's not so unpopular that it didn't pass in all the red states.
Wait, what?
The trans bills that passed, not about bathrooms, but about sports and all that horse crap.
But none of those bills were passed with popular support, Cenk.
I know they're passed by Republican legislators, and the Republican legislators are appeasing their base.
Okay,
and their base is maniacal.
No, they're
their
not.
base wants.
No, they're not. They don't care about their fucking base. They will screw over their base any chance they get. They don't care. They care when, like, you know, they're getting elected. But outside of that, like, they don't give a shit. Again, this is an unpopular thing, but they also don't really make a big stink out of it. Let's be honest. Like, they know it's a pretty unpopular thing, so they just try to, like, do it, like, a little under the radar. Like, the reason why these two know about those bills is because they follow this sort of stuff. But Joe Average out there, he doesn't, so he might not even know that the bills got passed. Like, it's just gonna be, like, these guys and the fucking, like, 8 trans women in a certain state that it might affect. That's it. But, like, they're not doing this to oppose their base, like, appease their base. Some of these legislators don't even have a big base to begin with. They're doing it because they're just like, we want to do it, but we also, as long as we don't make a big sting of that, like, we can just get away with it. That's it. They just want to get away with doing awful things. They don't care about their base.
That's it.
No, they're not. That you and I are entirely incorrect.
So they go fishing in that area. And in that conversation, I say, hold on, let me finish.
Okay.
I say, at some point, look, my real opinion is, at the professional level, yes, of course the leagues get to make their own decision. And sometimes, yes, trans women have an advantage, and the league is allowed to say, no, we're not going to allow it, okay? So what happens next? Every single person that I know in mainstream media saw what they perceive as a progressive community, then called me a Nazi. Then they go, okay, progressives are ludicrous. I'm writing all of them off, right? Are you kidding me? Because somebody's had, like, this microscopic difference of opinion with, like, the most radical end of the progressive base. They're right-wing pivot, Republican, Nazi. Well, okay, you guys sound nuts. Mm-hmm. Okay, and don't do that.
You think
Just say, hey, I disagree.
Look,
So
I'm going to be honest. Here's the thing. I feel like he's taking criticisms from probably, like, Twitter users with, like, 3 followers and taking that way too much at heart. Because from what I've seen, from the people that I followed who have criticized him, they have not gone that far. They have said that that kind of rhetoric is in line with certain ideals, and that is a bad thing. But they're not specifically calling you that. They're saying, hey, this is a dangerous rhetoric to spew because it aligns with a certain oppositional group. Like, that's the problem. It's not that you are these things, it's that you're spouting something that's in line with these people. But he's taking it way too hard. Like, sorry. Are there Twitter users who with like 10 followers who are calling him a Nazi? Probably. Who knows? But like, I think he's just taking that way too hard when all of his contemporaries, I feel like, are just trying to give criticisms on the propaganda that he is speaking and how it is very dangerous, especially with what side of the aisle he is on.
What?
Mainstream media literally called you a bestiality-loving horsefucker when you tried to run for office in California. You think they needed the fucking... you think they needed like 11 trans people with anime avatars on Twitter calling you a Nazi to be like
on them on a platter?
That's crazy.
And
they
then
have
there
material
are real
interests.
issues that are much larger.
They have material
that also cost us, and it makes it look like we are extreme. When in reality, 2/3 of the country's on our side. Take the fucking win. Take the win. So here's another one, and this one I don't know how you're gonna line up on this one.
No, this is
Defund
important.
the police. It's a terrible slogan.
Okay.
A terrible idea.
We're moving away from other talking points. Let's get back to the one issue that we were talking about. My perspective is that
we'll definitely get
they
back
have
to
every
that.
interest to fuck you every single time. Mainstream media does because of their underlying material interest in defending the corporate oligopoly structure that we have. This is who funds them. This is how people rise into positions of power in the media infrastructure. You've been a part of this already. Personally, you've seen it happen to you at MSNBC. So, like, there is no reason why they're not looking at, like, magical trans people on Twitter and going, oh, that's it. Here's the reality. They're being crazy again. They're calling Cenk a Nazi.
Yes, they are. And they're looking for any excuse. I agree with that. But then stop giving them excuses, which is the point you started.
Yeah, but no one's going to take those people seriously. Let's be honest. If someone came up to you, it was just like, if you were saying like, oh, I like this guy Cenk, I'm going to vote for him for president. And then some guy came up to you and was like, hey, look at this Twitter user with an anime profile picture with like 10 followers. They called him a Nazi. Do you think they're going to care all that much? And they might show you, like, oh, this is why they called him that. But, like, again, Joe Average is going to be like, oh, I immediately changed my mind. He is a Nazi now. They're just probably going to be like, yeah, I might not agree with him on this certain thing, but he's not a Nazi. It's just, like, a dumb issue to die on a hill for.
Okay.
Again, I think I think it's just because, like, he's very close to the situation with, like, media and the internet and shit like that. He thinks it's overblown, when at the end of the day, that's not what like the average viewer base, the average voter base is gonna care about. Like, the average voter base would look at that and be like, well, that's fucking weird. I don't give a shit about that.
There's a major disagreement here. We are at odds,
But we're not at odds. You say don't talk about it. I say don't talk about it. We say you say you're against the bill. I say I'm against the bill. You're for trans rights. I'm for trans rights. But my point is
but the difference is the same people that call you transphobic also called me transphobic all the fucking time. The difference is I don't change my perspective at the end of the day, or even offer it any fucking additional light, because who fucking cares? You just do what you think is right. And you keep pushing.
Yeah, like, at the end do I believe that Cenk overall is in support of trans people? Yeah. But I don't know why he's giving validity when he's just like, yeah, I don't think trans women should be a part of... I'm like, whatever. Like, even he said he doesn't really even care all that much. The problem is why would you even give that validity in the first place? That's the problem. Like, if you're part of trans rights, why are you giving validity to something that directly opposes it?
And I think that it's very dangerous and very scary when you get moved by your base of support that you have worked tirelessly for 20 years in, like, building and solidifying, turning on you and saying you're right wing now. I think that
didn't happen though. Like, I agree with you. It's 11 people on Twitter. So our audience
Why do
is
you
just
care?
as gigantic as it's always been, so you can go ahead and cry about it if you're among those 11 people. So I'm not worried about that. Haas,
Yeah, you're still winning, buddy. I don't know why you care about those 11
Okay,
people.
we'll get to that.
You obviously do.
Getting pigeonholed by mainstream media and Republicans as radicals, when in reality we are the overwhelming majority of the country. So we need to focus and get our messaging
I agree.
right.
That's why looking at a couple random people and greatly emphasizing the impact that they have, and even attributing the mainstream media's perspective shift on progressives, when you and I both know that they never fucking gave a shit, and they don't even need like a couple of random trans people to call you a transphobe to like justify their hatred for progressives.
Okay, let's go to a larger
There's
issue.
no reason to talk about that. Now, as far as like, there was one other point that I wanted to make. Because we were talking about state legislatures. This is really important, please. I think that a broader Republican project, and I think you'll agree with me on this, has been that they want to dismantle the power of the legislative body and then utilize the state legislatures where they know they have control due to gerrymandering and ridiculous district maps, where they can, even if they don't have popular support, even if they lose the majority of the votes, still maintain a majority in the House and the Senate. Right? State House and State Senate.
It's one of the most important things in the country.
Absolutely. And then there's a secondary side to this, though, because there is the judiciary. So they've also they've dismantled the legislative body. They have pushed their power in undemocratic ways through the state legislatures, and then also solidified that power and codified it by court packing. Right? So they have this very open project within the Federalist Society, all the way up to the Supreme Court of the United States, where they have hyper-reactionary judges that they've placed in positions of power through appointments, right? So when you do that, there is no need for a democratic process, which is precisely the reason why saying that these Republicans are actually acting out the desires of their psychotic, bloodthirsty base when they're pushing for, trans bills that are getting passed in every single state legislature is objectively false. Why is it objectively false? Because one, Republicans have never cared about their base. Let's be fucking real. They just use the culture war issues as a way to like draw up support. But in reality, they don't really give a shit about what the base wants. If they did, then they would have never in a million years allowed the Roe v. Wade decision to be overturned, because that was a much better way to just keep dangling in front of the most active base of support they have, white evangelical Protestants, and never actually push to actively dismantle Roe v. Wade and completely criminalize abortion in red states. That's why they have a major fuck up right now, because they're suffering from their own success. So I don't think that pointing to state legislatures and bills that they've passed to say, no, there is actually a decent amount of support for anti-trans legislation from the Republican base of support is correct, especially when all signs point to the opposite. At the national party level, the Republican Party is currently going through a crisis, an identity crisis. They have capitulated to incredibly bloodthirsty, psychotic fucking culture warriors for so long that they end up leading like Ron DeSantis, pushing for objectively unpopular bills, okay, by utilizing the state legislatures, and then suffering the consequences on the perception in the national party.
Yeah. So
yeah, and he's very much right about that. Like, it's insanely unpopular. Again, if the right wing wanted to appease to the base, they wouldn't have overturned Roe v. Wade. The only people who wanted Roe v. Wade to be turned was, again, we saw the statistics where it was like 50% Republican yes, and then 47 no. It's still a very big number, and at the same time, it's still very unpopular. Like, the only people who really care about it is the far right base, who are just like a bunch of weirdos. And yeah, like they try to make this whole case of like, at least with DeSantis, of like the reasonable Republican, like trying to get away from Trump. DeSantis, if anything, makes Trump look like the reasonable Republican, because again, it's just like these like gross issues that the far right has kind of adopted that is going to single out their voter base.
So, look, again, there's a lot I agree with, but let's break it down one by one. So, it can be both, Huss. It can be that, yeah, they've done the gerrymandering. Gerrymandering has done most of the work for them, and it made their seats pretty much impenetrable. So, if the Republican legislators do something, it doesn't necessarily mean that the voters of that state want it, for sure, right? But it can be that also the vicious end of the Republican base does want it, and the polling indicates that they do want it, right? And so, but the larger point here is...
I don't agree. I don't think they're...
No.
I don't think they're...
Hold on. Let me be clear. Because it depends. If you say you hate trans people, the answer is no in the poll for American people. They are in favor of trans rights. They are in favor of treating trans people in the same exact way about employment, health care, etc., which is wonderful. And again, 2/3 of the country is progressive. Okay, so when you go to ask them about bathrooms, no. When you ask them about the military, no. These people are willing to give their lives for this country, and you don't want them. What kind of a monster are you? So the American people are on our side on all those things. That's why they had to go digging for this stupid high school sports thing, right? And on that, I've seen the polling, and it's over 70% of Americans are on the side of banning them, right? Now, I'm on the other side. I'm with the 30%. And leave the kids alone, right? It doesn't matter if your daughter was going to break a record or whatever. Just calm down. Stop checking the genitals of kids. You sickos, leave them alone, right? So, but having said that, what they're trying to do, Haas, and this is the oldest trick in the book, and they did this back in the 1980s, is they dig until they find something unpopular, and they make Democrats or the left wing attack them on it. So, for example, flag burning. So flag burning, everybody knows it's protected by the First Amendment. They know it's protected by the First Amendment. But they want to make it seem like we hate America and we hate the American flag and we all want to burn it. So they contrive this bullshit issue. No one's burning the American flag. It's happened like twice in the last 20 years. And then the Democrats can't help but say, well, it is a First Amendment issue. You can burn the flag. And they go, you unpatriotic assholes, right? So so my point is the same point you're making, which is don't fall for that trap. So just say, hey, we disagree on this. Move on.
You're saying don't fall for that trap and don't even defend it or don't even. I'm saying
defend on the bills, because when there's a bill, you have to defend.
Yeah.
But then point out super aggressively what the Republicans are doing wrong.
Chelsea Manning has a question for you. Q for Cenk. Is it possible that trans people are reacting the way we are because we hear people make these talking points, and the next thing we know, people are saying, this is why I had to become a conservative time and time again? And that right-wing slant is true for the likes of Dave Rubin and many others, even including like former TYT people. I think that's where a lot of people are defensive when they hear you talk about this, or when they hear people fall into the trap of like jumping on every single non-issue that ultimately turns into discourse, like bonus holes or whatever the fuck, like some psychotic weirdo British person came up with at the fucking Daily Mail, right? If you are even pushing that discourse as though this is like real and applied and genuinely a threat to democracy because it's something that everyone is like forcing you at gunpoint to utilize, then all of a sudden you are a culture warrior, whether you admit it or not, because these issues are distractions and they're stupid as fuck, and that nobody should even talk about it, let alone amplify it. I'll take it one step further, though. There is one other issue here, and that is the Democratic Party. What do reactionaries do? They have no agenda, right? They have no agenda. They react, and they try to claw back civil liberties. That's their goal. And if the Democratic Party is not actually pushing material realities to change in a positive way and giving something to the Republicans to react to, right, to fight against, then all of a sudden the reactionaries are leading the discourse.
Yeah.
And that is the problem, which is why whenever issues like this come up, because listen, I have a very dynamic stream. People come in here all the time. They say a million different things and they want me to address it or they want me to talk about it. I am very terse, very strict about, like, whenever someone comes in and they're like, address what Anna said or address what Cenk said, I'm like, no, fuck off. I don't care. Shut the fuck up. We're talking about real issues. So,
but by the way, that's almost exactly what we said, and everybody called us Nazis. So not everybody, those folks. So look, guys, first of all, let's just be clear on everything, okay? So number one, I fight for trans rights. I have for 21 years when no one else was. So if you don't like it and you don't believe it, that's up to you. You can do whatever the hell you want, okay? So, and I just told you all my positions, which are actually 99% identical to the most extreme trans right activists, right? So we have a microscopic difference. So somebody asks me about it, I say it once, I'm done with it.
We're-
And then a giant pile-on starts because people want clout. They're like, oh, no, he's not as good as me. He's not as pure as me. He's a right-winger. He's a Nazi. Okay, so I'm like, I ignore it. And then they just keep going, and I don't give a shit. They could do whatever they want.
Okay.
But then don't pretend that I brought it up. No, you brought it up, and you made it a giant issue. And you're the one hurting the progressive cause and the trans rights cause. We win on every goddamn issue on trans rights.
You're hurting the cause when you bring up
on the hill that
you're hurting the cause when you bring up a point. Like, you're hurting the cause that even though you're trying to support it, you're still bringing the viewer base of being like, no, I don't think they should. Like, you're giving credence to it. When you're giving credence to this cause, you are hurting the cause. It's not the people who are calling you a Nazi.
no one agrees with you on. You're going to ruin trans rights on other issues.
Okay.
We're going to lose because you're being so extreme. And then every ally you have, you're like, nope, I'm going to be more pure than them. So I'm going to burn their bridge down. I don't want any allies. Okay, well then don't have any allies.
Okay, if both of our goals are aligned and we are interested in coalition building and actually fighting for justice, okay, there's two different things to do here. One is try to engage in purges and try to say this purity spiral is self-defeating, which I agree with you on.
100%.
Or the other thing is to just stay the course and just let people chirp into the void and never give them an ounce of pushback, because why? Every single if people are looking for
us,
if
come
people are
on,
looking
get
for,
outta
okay,
here.
no, that's not a get out of here
So
situation.
here, I'll tell you
this
exactly
is very
what
important
happens.
because
No, this is really important because you know why? So Haas, so every time we say any little thing, all the other streamers and stuff, these come in and go, oh, we're better than the Young Turks. We're better than the Young Turks. We agree with you 200%. They're such monsters. And they clutch their pearls and stuff, and etc. And then we go, okay, guys, we said a tiny thing. You guys said this nuclear reaction. Okay, say another tiny thing and defend our position for like 3 minutes on air, right? And then another round of nukes, right? We're better than the Young Turks. We're the most pure. We're the most progressive. Radical. We have to be the most radical. And if you don't believe us, then you're a Nazi. And then I made it an issue. I talked about it for about a total of maybe 3 minutes in all the Young Turks, okay? And then everyone else talked about it for 200 hours.
I know,
and pretended that it was us.
Okay, here's the thing that there's two different parts here. One, you've immediately ascribed to bad faith arguments to these people. You're like saying they're cloud operated.
Do.
Okay, so one, that might not be the case. There might be genuine disagreements. That's number one. But at which point you think, well, you know better than them, right?
No, they can disagree.
Okay,
I don't give a shit
okay,
about
but listen. But like, okay,
but okay,
even
but
if they are bad
me,
faith,
I'm going to call them Nazis.
okay, even if they are bad faith, right?
Okay.
Even if they're bad faith, then what the fuck are you doing giving them more clout?
I don't.
No,
I don't say
no,
anything.
no.
And then they do 200 shows
No,
about
it doesn't matter.
and then pretend I'm the one saying it.
It doesn't matter.
So I got, hey, can we agree that all the others, like Les or whatever the fuck their names are?
No.
Oh, no, they should all shut the fuck up then, okay? Right? Right?
Dude,
Because that's what you're saying.
Dude.
Why are you making a big issue out of it?
Because
I only said it for 1 minute. They said it for 200 minutes. Why don't they shut the fuck up?
I just want to say that comes from the guy who just went on a giant
understand
rant.
what we're disagreeing about.
He
So
barely
we
talked.
99% on the issue, and we agree.
I think the major
99% that it's not a major issue, and people are making a big deal out of it.
I think the anger that people feel towards that sort of thing inevitably derives from offering any fucking light to that conversation, especially when you understand that it is just like bullshit talking points that have been focus tested and being brought up. The moment that you give it any validity, okay, and now I'm not even talking about like.
Let's talk about a general thing.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm not even talking about like talking to other leftist people or like defending your positions or whatever. I'm talking about how deeply and undesirably unproductive it is to offer any amount of consideration to literally talking points that are cooked up in a fucking laboratory about 0.1% of the fucking population.
As they do 200 shows back to back.
There are a million streamers. And,
are you telling them?
No matter what happens, when people do write those things or people do say those things about me, I've learned the hard way not to give it any credence whatsoever and stay the fucking course. And ultimately, if people have made up their minds that I am a transphobic person, then that's, GG's. There's nothing I can do about that. If people think that I'm bad on racial issues or if I'm a misogynistic person, then there's nothing that I can change about their perspective. They are entirely too malleable, which is why I have assumed positions on so many things that the American population considers radical, whether it be foreign policy and what I believe in, or whether it be trans issues, even if it's something that Americans across the board consider to be like unpopular. The reason why I can stay the course in spite of that pushback is because I fucking ignore it, because I know that it is unproductive. That's it.
Yeah.
And the second thing I will say, and this is something that I try to talk to my audience about quite frequently, is that being a progressive is not about having black people or trans people hype you up all the fucking time. There are going to be plenty of moments where you are going to be at odds with activists. There's going to be plenty of moments where you have disagreements with the marginalized communities that you claim to speak on behalf of. Ultimately, it's not even about a logical conclusion to those problems. It's about being empathetic, right? That's at the heart of the matter.
So let's
being
do
empathetic.
a super important distinction, okay? Because and I don't think I made a good enough case for this distinction, and I want to be way clear. There's a difference between randos in the world that care about this issue, whether they agree with me or disagree with me, or they heard the wrong thing about me,
By the way,
or they have heard the right thing and they still think this guy's a Republican and I hate him. No problem. And media figures, streamers, etc. Those guys are largely scorpions. And it's because the incentives and disincentives create scorpions. Because when you attack someone else, you get into the algorithm loop on YouTube, mainly YouTube, but in some other places as well, and you try to get attention. So they don't even know, I hope they don't know, a lot of them, that they're doing it on purpose. I hope they're not doing it on purpose, but probably some of them are, right? But they think like, no, this is really important. I have to correct the record by attacking the Young Turks. Oh, look at that, my views went up. What a wonderful coincidence. I'm going to do it again and again and again. And this is not just about radical left. Are you crazy? No way. The right wing started this. Why does Steven Crowder dress up as me?
Yeah,
Right?
I was about to say, listen,
Right?
but you're...
So why did Jimmy Dore attack me like a nut job? Why did Sargon of Akkad go back to like 15 years?
Partially
why
because...
did Sam Harris? Why did all of them attack us?
Partially because you
YouTube,
respond.
We're the largest.
Partially because you respond. It's called getting farmed. Trust me, I know from personal experience what that's like. I, for a very long time, I got farmed like a motherfucker, okay? Because, just like you, perhaps because I am also as stubborn as you are, I couldn't shut the fuck up anytime there was like any error. Whenever someone said, this is what Hasan believes or whatever the fuck, I immediately rushed to correct the record, thinking that there was good faith discussion to be had. Now, out of the people that are actually criticizing you, there are people who I do like, who I do appreciate. I'm not going to get into that part of the conversation because I feel like that's going to blow a lid in this. It's going to make you blow a gasket. But the reality is that if you want to have a productive and successful coalition, you just can't stress that shit out, okay? You can't.
No, I'm good with
even
it.
Even if
Look,
they
I
say
was super clear. You like what we're saying, you come to the Young Turks. If you don't like it and you want super radical weirdos, there's like a million shows
but
for you.
that's what you're doing. Like you're casting everyone else in a bad light. Don't even talk about it. Don't even bring it up. That's it.
Okay, so I know I've been punched in the face 200 times,
when
and I'm not allowed to punch back.
Exactly, 100%. That's what I'm saying. Yes, you get it. That is what I'm saying. That's what being fucking progressive is, okay? If someone on your side is punching you, you ultimately turn around and say, I don't give a fuck, it's fine, because the real motherfucker whose face I have to punch is out there that actually holds on to all levers of power. Because while we're fucking arguing about the minutia of your perspective on trans issues, or whenever like you choose to engage in like any kind of reactionary framing of an issue, there are actual fucking people out there who are making everyone's lives actively worse. So why the fuck would I ever care about what some dumbass fucking YouTuber has to say when Ben Shapiro is, again, stealing our fucking lunch money and doing whatever the fuck is necessary to keep propagandizing every fucking awful position that makes people's lives worse.
Right.
That's why I fucking cover Ben Shapiro every day, by the way, you dumb cocksuckers in here who fucking think like, oh, why does the song talk about Ben Shapiro all the time? That's why. Because he's the fucking bad guy. You will never see me fucking agree with Ben Shapiro or Steven Crowder or any of those fucking bullshit charlatans out there, because those are the fucking bad guys. I don't give a fuck if people call me transphobic or racist or whatever the fuck. I'm not gonna stray away from my point of view, but more importantly, and I don't think you do either, but there's this one issue that you and I have, there's one disagreement, there's one difference that you and I have. You spend entirely too much time thinking about all the people on your side who fucking hate you, okay? Who say you're bad and wrong,
Yeah.
even if it's a misunderstanding. Don't even fucking clear it up. It doesn't matter. People will see where you are genuinely coming from when you keep saying the same shit that you're saying that you've said for 20 fucking years. That's it, okay? A lot of people yelled at me during the fucking Hogwarts drama. There were every trans content creator on Twitter yelled at me, okay, and said, you're a fucking piece of shit, you're transphobic. Oh, what, you can't play one fucking game that's transphobic? It was an idiotic fucking take from the jump. I said it a month in advance that this is entirely too popular of an IP. The best thing to do is not like try to do boycott, is try to boycott this fucking IP that's completely devoid of the transphobic person that is making money off of it, and instead use it to fundraise or push the issue further. Everybody yelled at me, said that was incredibly transphobic. What the fuck did I do? I shut the fuck up. I said, you guys are wrong, but it doesn't matter. History will absolve me. It did. Who gives a shit? The game fucking sucked. Right-wingers like Ben Shapiro made commentary on it, saying that Hasan is terrified of trans people in his own audience, and that's why he also has to capitulate to the trans people in his own audience, when if I wanted to capitulate, I would have never said anything about Hogwarts whatsoever, and I would have just stayed the course and never played it and said, yes, it's a transphobic fucking game. But I didn't do that because I'm a stubborn piece of shit. I yelled at the people and I moved on. Many of those people who thought I was transphobic in that fucking fervor have come to the realization that they were maybe wrong. A lot of people don't want to admit that they're wrong, especially when tensions are fucking high. It doesn't matter. They finally, quietly come to that conclusion that you were on, if they truly do believe that you are genuinely on their side. That's it. So just make your work speak for itself. You don't have to constantly fucking yell about random trans people online. And yes, that's what being the bigger progressive media person it revolves around. You have to do that. That's it.
All right, look, I'm going to take your advice. Let's move on because it's a microscopic issue.
There you go.
So
let's talk about defund the police now. Defund the police, okay? Issue with messaging overall. Another great issue because you and I have duked it out on our famous Thanksgiving specials that we do, where you come here and we argue about issues that we have disagreements on, genuine disagreements on. One of them is crime, right? Not to say that like I like crime and I think crime is awesome. I jokingly do say that from time to time, but ultimately nobody fucking wants crime. We might have a disagreement on how to solve that problem, right? Now, you brought up defund the police, so I would like to hear your position on that, and before I get into my monologue.
Okay, so first of all, it's the world's worst framing, and framing matters because it gets into people's heads and leaves the impression of who you are as a movement.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I talk to people who are in favor of defunding the police, the very first thing they usually say is, no, I don't really mean defund the police. Then why did you call it that?
So
don't call it that at all.
What would you message it as?
So, look, it depends on what you're trying to do. So, for example, and I believe in, as I think you, but we do have real substantive disagreements too, but I believe in criminal justice reform. I believe the cops' training is completely wrong. They're taught only protect yourselves, don't worry about the citizens, etc. Are there racial issues? Of course there are. Are there class issues? Of course they are. So I would want massive reform, and I would want the messaging to be around reform, which the great majority of Americans actually agree with. Again, 2/3 of the country is progressive. They agree with us. Don't drive them away with bad messaging, okay? When people hear defund the police, they hear there's not going to be any cops, and they panic. And it's not just white folks that panic. It's not just right-wingers that panic. Ilhan Omar almost lost her seat in a primary because 78% of African Americans in her district did not want to defund the police.
So how about this? Here's my reframing. And this works with a lot of like liberals that I talk to, at least, rich and poor. Hey, police, do your fucking job. Is that good?
That's actually
Is that better?
really good, and I talk about that all the time.
Okay, listen. Here's the issue, though, with defund the police. As far as messaging goes and as far as optics goes, you yourself have basically created an argument that you are not using in this situation. You said the media is all too powerful in manipulating public consciousness, and they can change people's attitudes for the better, even if it's entirely at odds with the material realities and the oppressive constructs built on top of those material realities. If that is the case, then optics issues are simply an issue caused by the media not pushing the message enough. Is that what you're saying? So if in a future where MSNBC is truly progressive, that they could just be like, no, defund the police is actually fucking super sweet. Let's go forward. Do you think people would be on board with it?
No, because it's mixed. So yes, media pushes the message, but the message itself is also important. So if you had the message of kill all people, that would not work well, even if MSNBC pushed it to ad nauseum, right? And defund the police is such a fundamentally wrong framing.
You think defund the police is a message as aggressive and as wrong as like kill all people? No.
I gave an extreme example, so not all examples are the same, but I think defund the police is almost as bad a message as you could possibly find, because it leaves the impression that there will be no police, no safety, no security, and it freaks people the fuck out. That's a fact, and it's shown in every poll.
Okay. Defund the police means what? Reallocate some of these ballooning police budgets to social safety nets and social programs, because that's where crime starts, and that's the best mechanism to combat certain types of crime, at the very least. Okay.
So that's where we get into substance.
So you don't agree with the policy, not just the optics. Let's just clarify that.
Yeah. So now the optics, I 100% disagree. When it comes to policy, it's much more nuanced. And by the way, if people don't like nuance, then you're not going to like me at all. Because you're going to, oh no, I want a black and white world. I want everything to be extreme. No, I'm not that guy. So where does the nuance come in? So if you say to me...
Which I agree with. I don't believe we should live in a black and white world. I do believe we should operate in areas of gray with a lot of stuff. But, like, I don't know. With the whole, like, I get he has a problem with, like, the saying. Now that drives people away. But, like, how else would you put it? Like, I'm sorry, but, like, taking police resources and pushing it to other other like organizations that would be better fitted for crime isn't exactly something that rolls off the tongue. Like, they use, to me it shows a lack of like, to me it shows that like, that some of these people find it difficult that people can't just like think about it or have a further understanding of things, where it's just like, oh, they're saying defund the police, but it's like as a slogan, so obviously it would, like, I don't know, that people can't just like understand things without like further looking into it. And that's true for a lot of people, I think, but like, to me, I don't know, some people do take stuff at face value, but like, it's just like a slogan. People obviously understand there's a lot more to that than just, oh, we're taking the police money. Like, I don't know. It feels like a lack of, like... It feels like you think the standard person is dumber than what they are.
Should we reform the police, reform the training? Obviously, as I said earlier, I say yes, right? Let's reallocate some of the funding, social services. You keep the same amount of money, but move some of it from cops.
I don't think
to
they should keep
social
the same amount of money.
Okay, hold on. We'll get to that in a second. Some of it to social services because they can handle X better. I'm open to that. I'm totally open to that. Okay?
So it's a semantics difference. You're saying, like, keep the same amount of money, but don't defund it.
Okay. First of all, semantic difference is a giant difference, as we just discussed. Optics, framing, etc., makes a huge difference. But when you get into the substance,
it doesn't matter.
There are some things I disagree with.
But you don't.
So
but you don't
for
agree with the
example,
policy anyway. You don't agree with the policy of like our ballooning police budgets year over year have not actually genuinely improved the lives or genuinely fucking put a dent in like in fixing some of the pervasive problems. You don't agree with that.
No. So look. So here's what happened. If you'd asked me that a couple of years ago, I probably would have agreed with that. And then we did in some places reallocate some of the money or cut some of the money. And so it's a little bit misleading in places like Washington, D.C., because they took from one budget and moved it to another budget, etc. But the bottom line is they did lose a number of cops in a bunch of cities. Okay, they lost raw number of cops.
Yeah, they died to COVID.
Yeah. Well, look, there was a lot of factors, okay,
Wait, what do you mean?
including cops not doing their job, which I'll get to in a second. But having said that, less cops, but that's not the main problem. But that was one of the contributing problems that led to more crime. Now, other things that I agreed with now have created issues. So, for example, no cash bail. Okay, I was totally in favor of no cash bail because I totally get the argument. I was the one putting forward that argument of, hey, a rich guy and a poor guy does the same crime. Rich guy gets out on bail. Poor guy can't get out on bail. That's totally unfair, right? But what wound up happening is recidivism is a massive part of crime. And so when we did no cash bail, yes, there are a number of guys who are down on their luck, high, whatever. There's a fat number of factors. And when we did no cash bail for them, they just went out and did more crime, more crime, more crime, more crime, more crime. And it became a real significant problem. And so when I look at it,
at a certain point, I got to cut you off because you've made a couple points that I definitely disagree with.
Right. So, but let me just button it up this way.
Okay.
And there's other factors. But my point is, let's be open to how do we get to the right reform so we have justice and they don't beat up black guys for no reason, they don't beat up homeless people for no reason, they don't shoot people for no reason, but at the same time have a reasonable policy where we protect the citizens.
Okay, great. So I've said this before. I'm not an abolitionist in the sense that, like, I don't believe that there is no necessity for a group of people, whether it's democratically organized or not, that will maintain the presence of law and order, but also solve crimes and do what police are theoretically supposed to do: protect and serve the community, protect and serve the people. In the United States of America, throughout the history of the United States of America, I do not believe that the police force, or whatever it was originally in its original inceptions, whether in the North they were the guys who were supposed to protect commerce in shipyards, or slave catchers in the South, have ever done that. They've always been protecting and serving the interests of capital. So that's definitely an issue that I have. Having said that, however, you brought up a couple different points that I disagree with in terms of defund the police, and also about how less police have caused more crime, and crime has like exploded in cities and whatnot.
A contributing factor.
I do not believe that in the slightest. I do believe that what is known as the blue flu has created a lot of issues that police are supposed to theoretically solve, which they never really have done a good job with. If you look at their clearance rates, you will realize that. Okay, but beyond that, it's gotten even worse than it was before, because these are the most selfish, the most lazy, the most entitled, gigantically, insanely violent, uneducated paramilitary group that you could have ever fucking put together, and all of their ineptitude and criminal negligence is constitutionally protected. They have no right to they have no duty to actually have to protect you. They can shoot you if they perceive you to be a threat when you're running away. All of these things have been protected by the Supreme Court. The real reason is because police are supposed to be a violent brigade that will defend and protect the interests of capital when push comes to shove. That is the reason why they are the way that they are. The idea that their funding is fine and that their numbers are diminishing, and that's what actually is like a real gigantic problem for crime, is, in my opinion, a historical and completely incorrect. They have gotten more money year over year, including in the defund the police years. Not a single fucking precinct, with I believe one exception, it might have been Minneapolis, if I'm not mistaken. Not a single fucking precinct actually had diminished resources or diminished funds. As a matter of fact, they got more money, and they got the most amount of money in comparison to all of the other amenities that the local governments are supposed to offer. The Los Angeles Police Department costs taxpayers $8 million a day to operate. And what is that operation? Not doing shit when a robbery is happening in front of them, okay? Now, if you ask them, they'll say, it's because you don't want me to be violent. You made me this way. You don't want me to stop the crime, so I'm not doing it. They're like petulant little fucking children, okay, who refuse to do the fucking job, that they are supposed to do. They have the best fucking workplace protections. They basically live in like a social democracy. They're the only individuals in society that have like fat pension programs and permanent job security. And then on top of that, what is their job? Is to be able to fucking shoot people if they want to and get away with it. It's fucking insane.
So
It's nuts. The entire structure is fundamentally broken, and that is by design. They are supposed to be that way. They are supposed to operate that way because when push comes to shove, when people are rioting in the streets or whatever, and when the inherent contradictions become ever present, and people start to react to that in either direction, okay, whether it's like reactionary activity, 3%ers and the like, or whether it's like people fucking throwing Molotov cocktails or whatever because they're losing their minds at the reality that they have no economic prospects and it feels like their lives are getting progressively shittier, okay? They will sit there and they will put their fucking police force in rich neighborhoods and protect those people and ensure that storefronts are not damaged.
So, there's actually a lot I agree with you on. The main difference is that I think all those factors contribute, whereas you think the biggest factor is the cops basically not doing their job, / their job was always misdirected in the first place, right? So I don't disagree with you on that at all. I just think that that's a big part of the equation, but not the whole equation. So, and I'll give you a couple of examples from LA to give you a sense of what I think are the issues. So in terms of the funding or the number of cops, I think that is a factor. You don't think it's a factor, but I actually think it's a relatively small factor.
If that was the case, then policing would have gotten better year over year as their funds grew, right?
And so, by the way, though, hold on. Don't make that argument, Huss, because crime statistics got way better throughout the years as police budgets did get larger, right? So that doesn't really help your argument. Now, but I don't think it's that simple either. I don't think it was just the police budgets. No, there was a lot of different things that happened with crime that made crime go lower, including, by the way, lead in the walls and the paints and the cars. So very complicated issue, right?
Yeah, but I'm glad that you at least brought up the lead point because crime has globally gone down.
Yeah,
in areas where police budgets. In areas where police budgets have not gone up as high as the United States of America.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out that it doesn't help your cause to say that the budgets have gone up and crime has gone down. That did happen. I don't think that's a great correlation either. Don't get me wrong. Okay, now I think and I agree with you that the bigger problem, the cops not doing their job, is in a story that I'm going to tell you. But it's also because of some of the laws that we passed. And so now some very violent crimes are misdemeanors. And they should not be misdemeanors. Because misdemeanors get pled down to nothing. Felonies get pled down to misdemeanors. Misdemeanors get pled down to nothing. Mm-hmm. Okay? So no one's talking about that. What giant part of the problem.
What crimes are you talking about?
Some sexual assaults are misdemeanors. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's insane. It's totally insane.
So
a guy in New York subway took a dump and smeared it on a woman's face, and that was a misdemeanor. How is that a misdemeanor? Are you insane?
Okay.
Okay, look. And maybe some mistakes were made there, and they should have made some of those things misdemeanors. And that's exactly my point. You don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, and you don't have to go to extremes and say we should only focus on one or the other, right? But now I'll give you an anecdote that is an example of the type of thing that happens. So I have a neighbor who's...
By the way, we're not operating under the principle that, like, New York, the New York Police Department, or the New York court structure... or New York in general, currently led by a cop mayor, is in any way, shape, or form like engaging in police abolition, right? Or defunding the police.
No, but
because it is more expensive to run the NYPD than like multiple countries' military.
Yeah, I don't think the budget is the issue in New York. So, okay. So let me give you that.
But anecdote. You used the poop example to,
No, that example was not about budgeting at all. That example was, if that's a misdemeanor, it gets pled down to nothing. So we have to make sure the serious crimes are felonies.
Okay. By the way, so you and I do agree on NYPD not being underfunded, but if you ask the NYPD, they are the most underfunded.
Oh, of course, they're always going to say that.
Okay.
Now let's just look at the NYPD budget right now. Let's see. 2022, $92 billion. Yeah. That's insane. Way too fucking overfunded. So yeah, that's what people are talking about when they say defund the police. Saying take a lot of that money and put it to better resources that would probably be better used for that guy who smeared poop on someone's face. Like, I don't know. I don't think someone should be getting a felony when they clearly have mental illness.
Look, are you kidding me?
So they're lying. Okay.
So here, I'm gonna get to that in a second. Of course they're lying. Of course they are. So it's not. What am I trust? Do I just trust cops? No way. So let me explain. So I have a neighbor. We wound up having some deranged person.
Also,
on
that
the
guy was
street.
charged with felonies. Apparently, the poop man.
Okay, so good. I'm happy that he was, but
Well, there goes your argument, I feel like. I mean, it doesn't get rid of his entire argument, but again, it just feels like he's trying to lessen these crimes. Also, someone with specifically this, line of questioning, and it does go on for a very long time, is he always brings up he always brings up anecdotal evidence, and Hasan will bring up actual empirical evidence, and he will go straight back to the anecdotal one, thinking that helps his case when the empirical evidence is actually against him. And that's kind of why this is longer, because it is a shit show. This is where they get really heated. This is where it really pops off. I mean, not like right now, but like definitely as it goes on.
In that situation, though, is
but
like,
originally he was let go,
why?
and so we have to That's an example. There are many, many examples, but let's, if you want to dive into that one and see what went wrong
it's
and
your
why
anecdote.
he was let go, that's great. Let's find out why he was let go, because he definitely should not have been let go.
Okay, so you brought up an anecdote.
So that was about cash bail.
So he
got out because there's no cash bail. Right?
Okay, got it. Cash bail was important to talk about as well, which is really, really, really important, especially with the conditions in Rikers as the way that they are. One reason why.
To that. Hold on, can I just tell the story because it informs
the rest of the conversation? I didn't think that I had to fact check you on something, but of course we're gonna have to cut through for a second. You know what I mean?
Okay, so why was he let go? Was it cash bail or a felony misdemeanor issue? Because it was definitely one of them.
I don't know why he was let go.
Okay,
you're the one who brought it up. I did not
11
know.
times. If I misremembered and it was 12 or 9, okay, corrected. No big deal. I'm happy to have whatever it was corrected. But there's a million examples of just like that.
The reason why cash bail and all of these kinds of, supposedly progressive implementations are happening is not because people have George Soros-backed district attorneys that want to undermine the American criminal justice system. It is out of necessity because of how draconian the American criminal justice system is, that we simply do not have enough space in our carceral state that currently houses, chains 25% of the entire population's incarcerated population, despite America being only 4% of the world's entire population. We have an overpopulation and overcrowding problem in our prison system, and that problem didn't happen overnight. It did not materialize out of nowhere. It happened with centuries of having the most draconian outlook on crime and punishment and refusing to analyze the structural issues that cause crime, the poverty cycle, the cycle of poverty and violence. That is why we are now at a situation where our prison population, our prisons are filled to the fucking brim, and the alternative is what? Like building more prisons, I guess, instead of trying to push for a different way of trying to solve the underlying reasons as to why crime and mental disorder manifests in the public. That is my argument.
Yeah. No, so listen, if you say we imprison way too many people, I 100% agree. But then you've got to break it down. So why did we imprison too many people in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, etc.? Because we had insane drug laws. That marijuana possession was a very serious crime, right? And we filled the jails with people
There's one
over
other reason.
marijuana.
There's one other reason.
What's that?
There's a material reason for it. Slavery.
Yeah, I got you. So, and we built private prisons. The private prisons fund the politicians.
No,
all that is
private
true.
prisons are a minor, even though they are like objectively one of the most cruel and inhumane things that you could do. That like Europeans look to and go, "What the fuck? You guys have that? Like you guys capitalize and profit off of the existence of fucking prisons? Like that's nuts." That's a small part of the puzzle, a small part of the conversation.
So
the state prison structure also relies on slavery as a form of punishment.
But Hans, okay, I Right. First of all, I think that the prisons were far too many, and we were imprisoning too many people, and mainly on drug charges. And yes, there are nefarious other reasons that you point out, I point out, private prisons, you point out slavery. And yes, slavery is real. They make them work for $1 or less per day, which is ridiculous. I know and fight against all.
Terrible.
Jenks say get your money up.
Best conditions.
Not your funny up. You say get your money up to the fucking to the prison system, you know?
Especially in like southern states, as you see right here, like Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, Georgia, Arkansas. I would have to. Let's see. I'm gonna look it up. I know there's a specific term for it. Private prisons. But yeah, like shit like that, it really doesn't help with this specifically. But they like treat their prisoners basically like slaves, and it's fucking terrible.
Motherfuckers more.
So, okay. But look, but at the end of the day, what is it that we're putting people in prison for? If you say just generically, okay, let's have less people in prison, that doesn't make any sense. Should we let out murderers, rapists? Of course not, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, what should people go to prison for? So we
shit
all
like that. But like at the same time, there's plenty of things people don't need to go to prison for.
Not go to prison for marijuana possession. That's insane, right? But we all agree that they should go to prison for murder and rape and the horrible crimes. So now we might disagree around the edges, but those are important edges, right? And so, say the prisons are awful. I totally agree. I don't know why we allow for the prisons to be disgusting, right? And how they treat people, the solitary confinement.
I mean, the average existence of a poor person in America is disgusting. Why the fuck would they care about prisoners on top of that?
No,
Nobody
but
cares.
what we do in the prisons is beyond
of course.
inhumane. And
of course.
So, like, there's all the jokes like, aha, you're going to go to prison, you're going to get raped. Why is that funny? Why is that a thing that we think is normal? No, rape is not normal. People going to prison and getting raped is not normal. That's insane, right? So do we need massive reform of the prisons? Yes. Do we actually need to spend more money to make those prisons bearable? And I don't mean just give it to the guards. I don't mean just give it to the warden. I mean actually make the prisons bearable. And we know that creates less crime. Look at Norway. Recidivism is much lower in Norway, and they have much more humane prisons. So reasonable people agree, progressives agree, the great majority of the country agrees, but yet our goddamn politicians won't do it. So those are great places to start. Okay. When you get to the issue of cash bail, Haas, I was in favor of it, but now it clearly shows that there's a problem with recidivism. So can we agree, hey, you get no cash bail on the first one.
Can I say something?
But on the second one, if you do another crime, you need cash to get out of it. Then you need bail. Because you are incorrigible. You're committing more and more crimes, and I'm not going to let you do that. I'm not going to let you brutalize the citizens because it's not fair. It's not just. We have to talk about the things that are real, that are in the middle.
Hold on. This is important because let's walk through some stuff here. Because last time you were here, you brought up some talking points that were just I was fundamentally at odds with, and this is another issue of disagreement, a point of contention. Okay. As far as cash bail goes, walk me through what you think happens in that structure. Like, do you think that someone goes up in front of a judge and they're like a habitual reoffender and the judge just goes, oh, there's no cash bail, so you're released? Do you think that's what happens?
Unfortunately, a great amount of times that is what happens. Yes.
Okay. No, it's not a great amount of times when that happens. It does certainly happen, though. I'm not going to say that it doesn't, but this is, in many respects, the classic Michael Dukakis moment where crime is a hot button issue and it invokes a lot of passion out of people. So anecdotes work really well in comparison to actual empirical evidence. The problem with cash bail is not that like people just keep stealing cars. You can give me 1,000 examples overall of being like, this guy's a carjacker and he got released immediately and he jacked another car, right? Ultimately, the data does not show these people are becoming repeat offenders, and what you are describing is an issue within the criminal justice system with a singular judge, or maybe some judges that fuck up every now and then. Because ultimately, if someone is a habitual reoffender, the job of the judge that you are bringing up is to say, no, dog, you're a poop guy. You're the guy. I'm sorry. You've smeared too much poop. Like, this is your second time doing this. I'm not offering you bail, because cash bail does not mean that judges have no power to offer.
They-
Judges
you-
have no power to
yeah.
stop you from, entering a carceral facility at any
Of
given
course,
moment.
if you committed
Of
a
course.
murder, you're not going to get bail anyway.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that is
But
precise.
Haas, then do you agree with me that if you do it a second time, that you need to pay bail?
I don't think that legislating that is the smart decision because,
Yes.
well, if you
Okay,
agree-
go ahead.
well, then
Why don't you think it's
then
smart?
the 3 strikes law would be a smart idea.
Yeah.
Okay, no, 3 strikes is you lose your entire life.
Yeah.
You lose.
Yeah.
It's
There's also a gateway to it.
No, there's a difference.
The
Like there was a
principle-
guy in
the
Louisiana that was serving a life sentence for stealing a pair of hedge clippers, right?
Okay,
so
but
that's a different issue.
the principle
than,
behind
hey,
it-
I'm letting you out to do another crime and another crime and another crime.
The principle-
I'm asking you, like, so would you? Is there? If it's not 2, is it 3? Is it 4?
What you're describing is literally codifying that in that way is quite literally running into the same exact problem that
No, it's for
feeds
bail.
into the carceral state. Whereas the problem there is judges should have discretion and they should apply that discretion appropriately rather than saying they are no longer able to apply discretion whatsoever because the law does not permit you because
I'm perfectly comfortable saying if someone does, especially if you go to 3 crimes, they got let out with no bail. No, sorry,
that's
brother.
quite literally the principle.
The
you're
law.
describing the
yeah.
principle behind the 3 strikes law.
Except
which
for the fact that one is about bail, and you're going to get an actual court date where you will receive justice and you will receive a trial,
Which, of course-
etc.
which,
the
of course-
other one is we take your liberty away for the rest of your
Which
life.
of course
It's
brings
a
us
giant
back.
difference.
Which of course brings us back to the the major reason as to why people are just kind of letting people go, and that is that Rikers is an insane place to even fucking exist, and no, a lot of those people are not getting their fucking day in court immediately because the courts are fucking backed up
I know.
because we have an incredibly draconian criminal justice system.
That's
with
why you shouldn't
no
commit 3 crimes in a row, because you don't want to go to Rikers.
Okay, that's awesome that you said that. Because you think that higher sentences or more aggressive ways of punishing crime is an adequate deterrent strategy when there is not a single piece of paper
No,
that
it's not
you
about
can
deterrence,
point
Haas.
to throughout. You just gave that as a reason for
no.
deterrence.
No,
It doesn't work.
No, brother.
It doesn't work. It has never
No,
worked.
hold on. So when a guy commits 3 crimes in a row, I'm not worried about deterrence. I'm worried about getting him the fuck off the street so he stops punching defenseless women in the face while they're trying to get to work. Okay. So I'm going to take his ass off the street. You've committed enough goddamn crimes, when we're going to put you away. And if
I'm
you want to
shocked-
cry about it, well, sad day for you.
I'm shocked
You shouldn't
that-
have punched a poor lady in the subway 3 freaking different times. In
I'm
the face.
shocked that you do not see. On the one hand, you have sympathy for the other guy who was swept away under the same draconian rules when he got
Because that guy
caught for
can't get out of
stealing.
prison for life. The
I
other
know.
guy just has to go to trial and prove he didn't do it.
Okay, so the guy that was suspected, because you don't have to actually do a crime to get thrown in Rikers, right? The guy that was suspected
yes,
in a
and
situation
that does happen.
In a situation
but
where
much more common occurrence is guys doing crimes over and over and over and over and over.
Okay, no, that's not.
Recidivism is like the #1 problem.
Recidivism-
a tiny amount of criminals
recidivism-
create a giant number
Wait,
of
wait,
crimes.
wait. I know that. Recidivism doesn't happen specifically on the bail side, though. Recidivism is the sum total of all people who were incarcerated that get out of prison after serving their sentence, Cenk. There is a much larger number of people that are serving prison sentences and getting out and then engaging in crime again, rather than being apprehended for a moment, being detained, and then fucking going out and doing the crime again. That's not recidivism.
So you're just talking past reality. You guys are going
Wait,
into
what?
the.
You
Hold
can't
on,
say
hold on,
that.
hold on. You guys are going into stores. Guys are harassing people on the streets, etc. And they're walking, brother. They're walking. And that's why they're coming back and doing it again and again and again. If you say that's not happening, you're arguing against reality, and that's exactly what I'm saying here. You're losing people. You're losing people who are on your side because they go, Haas, that's not reality. That's not the reality that I live in. They're locking up all the stuff in the CVS because guys keep coming in and taking it.
That's another really
I don't know.
good. See, again, all matter
You
of.
think that it just
all matter-
everybody's making it up? CVS is making it up?
Well, they're
The-
not, as a matter of fact. If you look at the actual data coming from the National Retailers Association, they literally talk about shrink, which is not.
We covered this before. Well, I kind of messed up the recording, so the video's not going to come out. But we talked about this before with the Philadelphia looting that was going on. And how retailers make the argument that when they shut down stores in certain areas, they're doing it because of theft. And how, like, there was, like, a big number of, like, money that the retailers lost last year that was, like, in the billions. But that's only due because they don't actually, like, they contribute that money to theft when it's not. Like, there is a percentage, but it also factors in, it's not even a big percentage, it's like 20, and that's not even countering in, like, organized theft, which is, like, I don't, I'll put, there's, like, a graph right here that I'll put when I edit this video, that's from the video we reacted to, but they also counter in, like, theft from, like, internally, from, like, employers, employees. They also keep theft from, like, outside, but they also, in a big part of it, is also damaged goods, damaged material, stuff that you just kind of, like, isn't stolen, it's just, like, we can't use it. So, and that is about, like, over 20% of it, and it's very similar in percentage to the other two. So that doesn't really play a big part of it. It's just in terms of, you know, just, like, damage to the material while it's traveling as well. So, like, these retailers want to make theft seem like it's a big thing by putting that number out there, contributing it to theft, when a big part of it also plays into, like, how the material is handled anyways. And they say that's why they are shutting down their stores, when it's not. It's because of competition. It's because of e-commerce as well. It's also just due to the fact that they kind of overinflate themselves in terms of the types of neighborhoods they are in. Like, they put up way too many stores in similar neighborhoods when they don't need to. So it contributes to them not making as much money as they want, so they close down those stores. But instead of just saying, oh, we messed up, this was a really bad idea, and we're going back on it, they contribute it to crime because, you know, the mainstream media has a large bias to cover crime and make it seem like it's this big bad thing that everyone needs to be worried about.
Necessarily simply people stealing 36% of that, the $112 billion number that they point to in terms of total shrink, actually is external theft in the form of organized retail theft, which, by the way, isn't the overwhelming majority of external theft that's happening. It's just a fucking media fantasy. Okay, 26.
No, it's not. We see with our own eyes, Haas.
Dude, do you want me to describe to you what the reality is by giving you empirical evidence, or are we going to talk like you're a reactionary conservative by just, you know, talking about your fifis? Like, this is not.
Fifis? You're crazy, man.
No. You're literally. Oh my
me
God,
your
you're doing Ben Shapiro.
No, brother, come on.
Facts
you telling
are-
me that Philadelphia didn't happen? Are you telling me
He's
they didn't
giving
know
you
that?
empirical evidence that this stuff isn't happening, but you're just like, you're using anecdotal evidence, anecdotal data to back up your points. Like, no, he's actually giving you, like, empirical evidence that it is the truth, but it doesn't matter because you feel like crime is on the rise. It doesn't matter.
Of course it happened. Do you think that $112 billion of shrink is happening? 36%.
Always happens.
Okay, exactly.
But now it's worse because they've added this extra layer.
Is it worse? That's really interesting because according to the National Retailers Association, that fucking same number that you hear in local media, that actual study shows that shrink has not increased in comparison to former years, and it's actually trailing along at 1%
so
increase
all those shops in San
alongside.
Francisco are closed because they don't want to make money? Because they want
No, they're closing because they're losing it. Because they realize, we already fucking said it. I literally already fucking said it. They're putting way too many stores in the same area. E-commerce is kicking their ass, and competition where they are offering the same, like, supplies at a lower price are kicking their ass. So they're getting rid of it because they're counting their losses. They realize that having those stores up aren't going to do them any good. But why can't he see that?
wanted to make some
Do you,
political point?
do you think organized retail theft is capable of stealing $112 billion? Or do you
it's
think
not
that
the
it's,
whole shrink, Haas.
Yeah, exactly. It's literally internal theft in the same way that
Has always existed.
Employees stealing 26%, which by the way, totally on board with that. Keep doing that.
Don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do that.
Not only that, but also there's inventory mismanagement, things that are damaged in the process. That's a part of shrink as well.
Always.
Shrink across the board has not increased in a dramatic way,
Haas,
according to the national.
Why are they closing down the stores?
Because
they close
real
down
estate.
Stores because you can't make money.
That's insane. They can't make money because of real estate, Cenk. They can't make money because brick and mortar has no basis anymore. There's no way to make money with a fucking Walgreens. No, that's a much larger factor. It's insane to say that like 3 fucking teenagers or 100 teenagers even are a gang of roving teenagers are able to literally take down the entire retailers in neighborhoods. That's crazy. You know where shrink?
They were gonna make that money back. And this is, by the way, with Philadelphia, they're more than likely gonna make that money back in the span of like a couple months or like just a month, maybe even less so, than they would ever from losing that. And that's the thing. Like they're gonna gain their money back. It doesn't matter. Like it's not just a couple of teenagers, like 5 teenagers running into a store and taking some product. Is not going to cause a business to be like, oh, we're moving out of the area. We're counting on the losses. They're gonna make that. One situation is not gonna make them immediately lose their money. They're definitely gonna make that back. It's insane to think that otherwise. It's insane to think that fucking 5 teenagers can ruin an entire business in this one area. That is like incredibly corporately backed.
You know why shrink has actually increased? Self-checkout. That's why shrink has actually increased. Because you know what contributes to shrink? That $112 billion number? You know what actually increases that? You and everyone else that goes into a fucking Wawa and like steals the Skittles. What do you think is happening more frequently? Roving gangs of people that are able to steal billions of dollars of merchandise, or a sum total of every fucking American doing the same goddamn thing without even thinking about it when they just go into a Wawa and yoink a Skittles at 2 a.m. when they're high as fuck. That's what is actually the shrink.
But Haas, I'm not denying any of the factors that you mentioned. Those are all real factors. But you're denying the one factor that everyone can see with their eyes. So are you saying? So what should?
No one's seeing it with their eyes. No one. You know, just because you can see it with your eyes doesn't mean there's not a deeper understanding to it. Like, I don't know what he's trying to what point he's trying to come across with. Literally, he's giving him empirical evidence, and it's just like, it doesn't matter, because everything I'm just seeing at face value is happening, and that means it's right. Like, I don't need to do any further research into this. It just matters that it's happening in front of me, and even though I could definitely get a better understanding of it if I just, thought about it further, I'm choosing not to, and therefore, you're wrong, I guess.
What do we do with those guys who break into those places?
Okay.
Shouldn't we put them in prison right away and make sure?
Do I think that police should stop robberies? Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Yes.
That is insane. No, that's not a few moment because the reality that you.
Yeah, cops should stop robberies. There, I don't think we should throw them in prison right away.
Are dealing with is not what is actually happening, and it saddens me to see you go along with mainstream media narratives that are inherently reactionary.
It's not, Haas, you're not living in reality.
Brother, how am I not living? I just gave you empirical evidence. You gave me look around. That is the reality. How is that not any different than what Ben Shapiro does?
First of all, we all see that they walk into the stores, they take the stuff. We all see that the stuff gets locked up. We all see the stores closing down. Not only that, we all experience it.
It's facts over. It's feelings over facts.
I was talking about because it's instructive.
Which is
not because
ironically
it's
just how Ben Shapiro
definitively
operates.
anything. But it's instructive for what I'm
facts. It's just about how he feels about the situation.
Which partly agrees with some of the things that you have said. Okay. So we got a guy in the neighborhood. He's carrying around this metal pipe, and he's sharpened the edge, and it looks like a frickin' spear. And there, by the way, there was another lady with a machete, these are real stories. You can catch feelings over, but they're absolutely real. And by the way, the lady with the machete, nobody did anything about her because the cops say, oh no, we don't see the machete, and that's the cops not doing their job, right?
I agree. Yeah.
But at the same time, they go, we take her in, she comes right back out. Okay, so at some point, she finally grabbed a mom and a kid. Finally, they took her away. She comes back 48 hours later. Okay, fine. But now, the guy with the spear is yelling the N-word 24/7 on the corner of the block. So I have a biracial neighbor. She comes out, and he sees her, and he starts calling her the N-word. And he's got a goddamn weapon, right? And then cops come out, eventually, begrudgingly, right? And the cops say, no, we're not going to do it. He puts away the spear. The other lady takes it away. The cops go, no, we're not going to do anything about it. And they say, why? My neighbor asks, why? 2 reasons. One, we bring them in, and they get released. You want me to bring them in? He's going to be back out here in a couple of hours. Okay?
Earlier, you said you don't believe cops, and now you're saying you believe cops.
Hold on, let me finish the story. And then as they're leaving, they then say, no, if you care about this, you should care about how you vote. So that's the cops saying, I'm not going to do my goddamn job unless you vote Republican, unless you can let me kick people's ass for a living. I don't like solving crime. I like kicking ass and when I have an overwhelming advantage, right? So is that real? Yes, it's real. But it is also real, Haas, that when they bring them in, they let them out. And so what happened with the lady with the machete? She's back out in 48 hours.
Thank you for bringing this up because it made me more angry at the cops.
That's my point. Both things are true, Haas.
Okay,
cops aren't doing their jobs. And if I was in New York City police, if I was Bill de Blasio back in the day, I don't know if you remember, the cops turned their backs on him in some press conference when he was doing like a mild critique of cops or something.
Yeah, I remember. They run the show over there, the Sergeant Benevolent Association.
Yeah,
they dox his child.
Yeah, you know what I would have done? I would have been like, you're fired and you're fired. Go ahead and sue me, okay? And police chief, you're fucking fired. And if you don't do your goddamn job, you're all gonna get fired.
Okay.
Go ahead and sue me. Okay?
Can we
before so both are factors.
Okay. Can we get back to the major difference of agreement that we had, because like you were doing the anecdote thing while I was trying to show you something that is objectively true. One, Walgreens, when they closed down their shops in certain areas, they said it was crime. Crime was the reason. I at the time said that's fucking bullshit, and it didn't matter because everyone was doing the same thing that you're doing. Look around! Look around! Crime is happening everywhere. Except Walgreens now openly states a year after the fact, oh yeah, I guess the CFO came out and said, the chief financial officer said, that maybe we cried too much last year over theft. The question at this point is, why did they do that? I know why they did that. Do you have an idea of why they said crime was the reason why they were closing their shops?
So, look, you're taking Walgreens as one example, and there's a lot of different companies that react in different ways, and there are a number of factors. So if Walgreens admits that they overstated the crime, there was a real reason why they closed their shops. I agree. So in that case, one of the other factors was probably larger, right?
Yeah. So what is the reason?
The point you make about
so what do you think it was?
The point you make about real estate is actually a perfectly good point.
So you think it was
Amazon?
Amazon?
That is also one of the factors.
Okay, so you think it was like same-day delivery, Amazon, e-commerce dominating?
That's complicated too, because that's a contributing factor. But COVID made a giant difference because people were not actually physically going into the stores.
True. So that's good. So you recognize all of that. Okay. So if even one of these executives that was leading the fucking charge openly admits that they were lying a year prior, and the National Retailers Association that puts out those numbers on shrink is openly admitting that the increase in shrink is like actually perfectly in line with the increase in retail shopping and it's totally normal, then you as a smart person values empirical evidence over personal anecdotes should, in that situation, do what?
So, Haas, look, if you want, next time I'll come with a book of statistics for you. But are you saying that in Portland, the good progressives in Portland were full of shit and they panicked and they got rid of their progressive legislators and got tougher on crime because it was just all a mirage and they bought into the mirage? No, Haas, you see the crime, you see the numbers going up, select cities. See it sometimes affecting some retailers but not other retailers.
Or they're just affected by the media that's in their area that inflates what's going on and misinforms them. They probably are feeling like, oh, well, I'm not seeing it, but because this news source that I trust says it's happening, therefore I will vote for this, more strict, crime policy. It's obviously media plays a big part in manipulating this, and we've seen that with the empirical data that's been brought up. But at the same time, I don't know.
The confluence
Also,
of
Portland just feels
factors,
like
if you think that actual
easy answer to
crime
go for.
is not one of the factors, go ask the good people of Portland, go ask the good people of Seattle, who are all overwhelmingly progressive. And they're saying, we've had enough of this shit. Will you, for God's sake, when someone commits a crime, put them in goddamn jail?
Okay. I don't know what to tell you because, like, I'm. You can come back with more statistics, which I think if you are a media person with a profound amount of influence, 5 billion views a month, like you said,
No, a year.
or 5 billion
That'd be
views
nice
a year,
month.
you should probably have those statistics because those statistics should have been guiding your.
So you think the people
point
of
of
Portland
view.
and Seattle just totally got played? There was no crime. The
I'm not
homelessness
saying that-
situation wasn't out of control.
I'm
in
not
those
saying that
cities.
there is no crime. I've never said that there is no
Okay,
crime.
but then it was overhyped.
Crime
and
is
then
a-
they threw out their progressive legislators
Crime is a.
because they were wrong.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that because in San Francisco, Chesapeake was recalled, right?
Right.
Because he's like woke George Soros back DA, and yet it's not like they got a handle on crime after that.
Because it's about the laws, it's not about one individual. So that's why I'm focusing on too many misdemeanors that should be felonies, and we got to put a cap on no cash bail. I'm giving you very specific, reasonable amendments of what we need to do to have a fair prison system and a fair criminal justice system that does not over-imprison people and that does not under-imprison people, so that you protect everyone and
There's
have
no,
justice
there's
for
no.
all.
Come on, you can't say that there's a problem with under imprisoning people in America, right?
Well, these days, unfortunately, in some cities there are because
No,
of these
you would.
laws that we
In
passed.
some cities, what cities? Point to a single city where there's an under imprisonment issue.
For the last 3 to 5 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Portland, Seattle, San Francisco.
Okay. San Francisco or in the California in its entirety, okay? Because San Francisco is like, what do you point to with San Francisco's under policing? Like the classic grand larceny restrictions have been limited, right? So why did it happen in the last year or so when that's been in place as a law for, what, 10 fucking years almost?
That's because they started watching the local news and going, oh, we can do this and there's no consequences. Let's just all go steal shit.
Okay.
Because nobody's getting arrested.
Okay, got it. But we already established that retail theft has not actually increased according to the Retail Association. So where is that happening? That is outside of the bounds of reason.
So look, you're coming at, so, all right, Hus, you win. Next time, I will come, credible stats about crime, because you're obsessed with proving that our eyes are lying to us. And that the stats are perfectly lovely. There's no extra crime. There's no extra retail
this is really
theft.
important. This is really important.
We're all making it up.
This is
We're
the same
all under a
conversation.
paranoia.
Jake, this is the same conversation that I had in some respects with Andrew Tate. No, I'm serious. Anecdotes have a tendency to misguide us because, of course, when you see something happening right in front of your eyes, you have a tendency to think this is happening infinitely more frequently, which is why we rely on empirical evidence. Right? That is.
They're letting people go. That's a fact. That's a
okay,
fact.
but one part of that.
The lady has a machete. She's back on the corner in 48 hours.
I understand.
You're denying people's reality and you're driving them crazy. And you're making them go, I'm not going to vote for that person or anyone associated with that guy under penalty of law. I am not going to let my kids get kidnapped by a machete lady because Haas has some stats about Walgreens.
You're mixing and matching two different things when we're talking about it. You're saying crime across the board, specifically in retail stores, is happening, and it's happening at levels that previously were unheard of or unseen.
You're obsessed
I'm
with
showing
the retail
you.
stores. I'm telling you the
No,
broad
that's one
picture.
aspect of it. As far as the criminal mishandling of the personal situation that you're talking about, I'm right there with you. It is unimaginably cruel that police have this fucking stranglehold on the neck of Americans where they just go, sorry, I'm not going to do my fucking job. That requires swift justice in the sense that these cops that misbehave in this way, that get paid $300,000 a year with overtime pay that they fucking did, all to just sit around in a fucking parking lot and jerk off all day and look at their fucking laptops and drive around and drive over fucking red lights with their lights off every goddamn day for no fucking particular reason. Those pieces of shit need to learn to do their goddamn jobs.
All right, so I was listening while I was prepping my food for dinner. To me, it's just wild that Cenk just doesn't understand. Like, he is fundamentally not even using his, like, seeing things with his eyes because he's being shown fundamental data that his viewpoint of this, of crime, is not factually based. But instead he is just like, no, I'm seeing it with my eyes. Like, you're not even seeing what's in front of your eyes right now. You're not. Hold on. Gotta catch my breath. But here's the thing. It's also just funny to me that he's saying that Hasan is making people go crazy based on his viewpoints from a guy who's just like yelling and throwing his arms around. Like, I don't know, dude. Dude, I don't understand how you can clearly say that when you are just shouting and yelling all over the place.
One of that is being
factor. You're wrong.
How is that not the most significant factor?
Are they letting them go or are they not letting them go?
They're letting them go and then telling you they're letting them go because, sorry, there's nothing we can do because these woke DAs are going to...
letting them go, Haas. The prosecutors are letting them go. And then the cops are not doing their job. It's a double whammy, okay? So are you saying the prosecutors haven't changed anything about cash bail?
Do you think...
haven't changed anything about misdemeanors versus felonies?
Do you think...
and that it's just magically
Do you think prosecutors are just like, we love that fucking... Do you think that in the United States of America, under this criminal justice system, okay, do you think that prosecutors are going, we love crime, let's fucking let these people go? So what is it about then?
So when a law changes and a prosecutor says, hey, brother, this used to be a felony, but now it's a misdemeanor, about to nothing and fucking, because I can't try all these cases. I can only try about 2% of these cases.
Okay.
So I have to do please. So when you call something a misdemeanor, I'm going to let that dude walk 9 out of 10 times, okay? So all I'm saying, Haas, is a slight change where we go, those crimes should not be misdemeanors, they should be felonies.
Okay.
We go one by one, and I bet you we get overwhelming agreement, right? And the other slight changes, hey, somebody commits a crime once, don't make them do a cash bail. That's not fair to poor people, middle class people, etc. But somebody does, in my opinion, 2, you could say 8, whatever the number is, and we could argue over the number. But if they do 2 crimes back to back, then
Okay.
Then you've got to stay in jail, and you've got to pay bail. That's it.
Okay, I don't agree with your solutions because the problem here is that, and the reason why I went back to retail theft is because it's the one that like everyone fucking constantly talks about, is that when you're talking about like violently threatening someone with a fucking weapon, okay, that's not a misdemeanor. Like
in a lot of places it is.
No, it's not.
All right.
Okay, in Los Angeles, is it a okay? Threatening assault with a deadly weapon is a misdemeanor in Los Angeles?
No. First of all, let's look it up.
It's a felony. It's a felony.
No, dude, you just took the most extreme example.
What do you mean?
You're like attempted murder.
That's
is that a misdemeanor?
Wait, no, I did not use attempted murder. I used the anecdote that you brought up. You said making criminal threats or threatening to assault someone with a deadly weapon is lowered to a misdemeanor. It's your example. I didn't bring that up. You brought it up, and I'm fact-checking it.
I don't know why that machete lady was let out. Okay, so I wasn't there in her court trial. But so
why are you using it as an example if you don't even know? Actually, fucking research this stuff. I don't know how he can be so knowledgeable and willing to do research on so many other topics, but for this one, he's literally just like, nah, I don't need to do any further digging, and I will use examples I have no understanding of.
Sexual assault here, petty. I just looked up like common misdemeanors, right? And we can get it. Like we should do a real analysis of it. But some forms of assault and DUIs, on and on and on.
No, I love that. We will get into that in a second. This is very important, and it deserves self-examination. This is an issue that happened in the real world in your life. This is something that you have used in your commentary. Should you, in your opinion, at least do the due diligence and have checked to see if it was a misdemeanor or a felony when it's an example that you've used before last time you were here? Since between last time you were here and now, do you think that you should have
2 weeks ago?
Oh, okay. You were then you were talking about a separate issue.
I'm going to read you misdemeanors in California: assault, battery, indecent exposure, shoplifting, domestic battery, trespassing, receiving stolen property.
Trespassing.
Okay. You laugh at trespassing. Here's another anecdote. I know you don't like anecdotes, but this is real people's lives. My neighbor comes down.
It's
what
not
you
as-
just said right there, I agree
Thank
with like
God.
98% of it.
Okay,
So
great.
Can we end on agreement? Because we've done it for over 2 hours now.
But the problem is, you made this argument with like 11 different talking points that we had to go through piece by piece and examine and find out is not necessarily the way that you have presented it. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, and I think it's important, is specifically because this is dangerous thinking. Because once you are this impassioned about a particular subject, you start seeing information, especially in a mainstream media that is motivated by corporate goals, that correspond to your biases, and sometimes you don't examine them deeply. And that is a problem, and it's an infinitely larger problem when you are a 30-year progressive political commentator. That is an issue that I do have. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't think you're looking at this stuff objectively because you see crime or you see manifestations of crime, and I think that is causing you to grab on to whatever right-wing framing that...
It's not right-wing framing. I mean, how much more nuance could I have been? 2 hours and 15 minutes of fucking nuance, and you call it right-wing framing.
Because when we look at the nuance...
All right, then I'll do likewise. Okay, you think crime's no big fucking deal. Hey, go, people of LA, fuck off and deal with it on your own. I'm not going to give you any cops. I'm not going to give you anything. And I'm going to say, oh, progressives are always right. Just decriminalize everything and crime for everyone. Okay, we can both do exaggerations if you like. Yeah, we can both do it.
I don't think that I...
So, like, you're saying it's all anecdotal. We've gone through how many stats? How many times have I shown national crime numbers have gone up and you've agreed? Okay, so we've gone over it and over it and over it. Huss, you're saying to the people of these communities that they're imagining it. They are not fucking imagining it. They're not imagining it.
We're going back to the same issue that we had in the beginning of the conversation when we were talking about two ways of looking at the same data point. You can look at overall shrink without knowing what contributes to that, okay? Like the National Retail Association reveals shrink numbers year over year. Local media will look at that and go, $112 billion worth of merchandise has been stolen, and they will interlace that into footage.
I'm not local media and I get proper context.
Hold on. They will interlace that with footage of like black teenagers stealing Gucci purses or whatever the fuck to drive home a narrative, right? But when you look at the actual data in and of itself, you realize that the reality is not that like retail theft has gotten completely out of control. As a matter of fact, it's only increased by around 1%. Overall shrink is increased by around 1%. And that is completely an understandable increase that is adjusted with overall retail increasing, not just crime, but retail increasing. So when you see that, there's two ways to look at that. There's two ways to analyze that data. $112 billion, that's crazy. I already have seen the anecdotal, the emotional anecdotes that the media is showing me, and I see the $112 billion number, and I go, wow, that's fucking nuts. Okay, I start developing this idea that it is like rampant and out of control. So what do I do in that situation? I show you the actual information in the way that is supposed to be presented in an objective manner. That is not me saying that you're doing this deliberately or by design. I'm saying that it would require a little bit additional, I think it would behoove you to look into it a little bit further when you see something about crime running rampant, instead of immediately going along and saying, no, I already feel this way. This information is presented to me and such, so I'm just going to go along with it and say it is run rampant. That's it. That's all I'm stating.
I'm going to take your advice from earlier and say, hey, we disagree a little bit. God bless.
All right. Well, is there anything else we want to talk about? I'm sorry. We spoke for 2 hours and 17 minutes.
I mean, again, I feel like I said this before. It feels like I don't understand. Because I used to watch the Young Turks. I unfollowed them. It was before like the whole controversy that they got themselves into recently. It wasn't really on one particular issue. I wasn't watching their content as much anymore, so I just unfollowed. But I don't understand how he can be very knowledgeable on certain things, on a lot of things, and do give a very factual based answer to it. But when it comes to this, it's all what he sees with his eyes and nothing further. Like no empirical data, nothing of the sort. And if it's just, again, what it's to him, it's feelings over facts right now because the facts don't support him. It's all anecdotal evidence that he even is getting wrong. That he is getting wrong, and it doesn't matter to him. Like I don't understand why he's just so headstrong about this.